Welcome to my channel. If you're looking for an amazing novel, visit my Patreon page. Your support will help turn this story into an exciting audiobook. Join me on this journey. Chapter 21, Day-to-Day Tomfoolery. For the most part, Citrinida's days are pretty mundane. Not to say he doesn't do his best to make them more lively. He typically fulfills his days with a regular schedule that fits his character. For example, creating potions, scrolls, doing alchemical tests or reading books of any sort. While it seems tedious, alchemy is quite an interesting subject. So, things are never really boring per se. It's just when comparing these activities to major plot points and or events like exploring the world, or partaking in a war, regular day-to-day tasks seem dull. Furthermore, it doesn't help that specific plot points happen over long periods. Despite that, there's always a unique calmness and satisfaction to doing these alchemical tasks. There should be roughly 4 days until the lizardmen fight Nazaric's fake army. In that case, I'll complete that task Demiurge talked about in the Happy Farm sometime before that or once all the lizardman stuff is over. Doing the latter would leave me 6 days of free time. Citrinidas tapped his finger on the desk in his bedroom, thinking about what to do next. However, his thoughts were disrupted by a knock on his door. Lord Citrinidas, the voice of Rimuro called out from the other end. You're permitted to enter, Rimuro. The alchemist politely stated as the maid opened the room's door. Is there something I should be aware of that warrants your visit? The maid only shook her head. Yes, Aura requested to meet you on the 6th floor. Sadly, that is all the information I currently have. They wanted to surprise you there. Rimuro bowed apologetically. Aura, huh? The last time I saw her was at the floor guardian meeting. I guess she found the courage to speak to me? That or she's still upset. Either way, I don't mind meeting up with the child. Hell, whatever shenanigans she wants to cause is a needed refresher after visiting the Happy Farm. No worries, Rimuro. I'll go to the 6th floor now as my schedule is empty at the moment. I'll be back soon. Just keep working as you normally do. Getting up from his desk, Citrinidas waved his hand as he cast a portal that led to the 6th floor. Rimuro closed the bedroom doors and went back to work, not before bowing as Citrinidas disappeared into the portal. Scene change. The 6th floor within the Great Tomb of Nazarick was a place of absolute natural beauty. Something you probably couldn't compare to in the New World and definitely something you couldn't compare to in the real world. The view of a gigantic tree and a larger-than-life amphitheater in the background was something impossible to compete with. The glistering fictional sky that shifts from day and night only solidified that idea. Aura and Mare, the cross-dressing dark elf twins, were doing what they usually did in their domain. Things such as tag or playing with beasts. Hut, wah, whoa. Aura made odd noises as she swung from tree to tree before doing a superhero landing near Mare. Why are you reading right now, brother? Citrinidas will be coming soon. The sentence caught Mare off guard as he dropped his book. What? He stuttered out in disbelief. Citrinidas? Here? Now. Aura smugly nodded. MMHM. Aura hummed in agreement. It'll be fine, I'm sure of it. I'll just persuade him to give us some cool potions to mess around with. Mare tilted his head slightly in confusion. Persuade? If Citrinidas is coming here, then why would you need to persuade him to give you potions? Oh, I didn't actually inform one of his servants why I wanted him here. Just said it was a surprise and left it at that. The cross-dressing boy's eyes widened with worry. What? He exclaimed. Wouldn't Citrinidas get mad at you? You'd never know what goes on in that head of his. Aura dismissed the words of her brother. Relax. I'm sure he'd understand my reason for having fun. Anyways, where is he? Aura questioned, tapping her foot while rubbing her chin. Right behind you. Gah. Aura turned around where the sudden voice came from while jumping backwards. The hairs on her skin froze up as her heartbeat increased. Behind her was the cryptic plague doctor in all his glory, covered in a veil of mystery with a grey robe and a white bird mask. Mare let out a slight giggle but was also slightly surprised by the sudden appearance of Citrinidas, who most likely used teleportation magic. Greetings, Aura. And you too, Mare. I hope I didn't scare you as that wasn't my intention. Citrinidas said nicely, somewhat calming Aura's nerves down. And no, you didn't scare me at all, Aura exclaimed with confidence. Though, her slight stutter suggested otherwise. Anyways, thank you for coming here, Citrinidas. Is it possible for you to help us? The alchemist was quick to reply. Firstly, you two children don't need to thank me. I'll gladly help you with whatever you need. Secondly, what do you need help with exactly? Why making crazy and cool potions for us to play and prank with, of course. I knew it. Oh well, this should be fun. Time skip, 3 hours. Aura and Mare lay on the ground, absolutely drained of energy from continuously playing for 3 hours straight. Citrinidas, however, was perfectly fine. Not that he participated in the twins' fun. No, he rather watched from the sidelines and supervised like a parent would in a children's playground. Watching the two play was certainly entertaining. Seeing their reaction to having their voice suddenly change was quite comical. Though, I don't believe I should do this too often as that would be out of character. Citrinidas concluded, getting off the magical seat he made with Create Greater item. Well, Aura and Mare, it was certainly fun watching you two mess about. Now, if you'd Citrinidas' voice was interrupted when a purple portal formed between him and the panting twins. Rushing from the portal at breathtaking speeds came a Lolita vampire who lunged at the unsuspecting plague doctor, making him fall to the floor. Thankfully, his mask wasn't knocked off. Citrinides, you were playing with Aura and Mare? Why not play with me in your bedsheets? Shalltear screamed, tightly hugging Citrinides like a snake constricting its prey. Well, maybe if you didn't have so many fucked up kinks, I'd do it. Teleportation. Shalltear fell to the grassy floor as Citrinides disappeared from her grasp. Shalltear, the alchemist called out. Aura and Mare are children and I don't mind them having fun using some potions. Secondly, talking about that would be inappropriate considering the twins are next to me. Then let's talk about it somewhere else. We could start cuddling, slowly kiss, then have your glorious Citrinides put a finger on the vampire's lips, instantly silencing her as she wildly blushed a deep red. Enough, let's go somewhere more private to talk about this. Opening a gate, he gestured for Shalltear, which she happily complied. Citrinides quickly followed behind the Lolita vampire who listened to him before exiting the 6th floor, thus leaving the dark elf twins on their own. Ugh. I think I got ABS from. Hiccup, laughing so much. Aura muttered under her breath. Why yeah, sister, that was too much fun. Scene change. Citrinides and Shalltear entered a white and elegant hallway on the 9th floor of Massacre. The place was devoid of anyone, making it the perfect place to hold a more adult conversation. Now, I thought we came to an agreement with Esteth about this stuff back in the Dragon Kingdom. Am I right, Shalltear? Citrinides questioned, making Shalltear raise a finger. Well, firstly, it's not fair that Esteth got to sleep with you one more than me and also getting to go on a torture date with you. I want to torture people with you as well. Shalltear. The plague doctor repeated Shalltear's name like a parent would when warning their child not to do something. Alright. The vampire muttered, letting out a slight huff. Now, I don't mind your Esteth sleeping next to me on occasions. I understand your love very clearly. It's your sexual tendencies that you need to control. Citrinides' words made Shalltear tilt her head in confusion. Sexual tendencies? I don't follow, darling. Although on the outside she was calm, internally she was praising the alchemist. Ah, your mysterious intellect is so fucking hot, Citrinides. How I wish for you to marry me, violate me, and impregnate me. I want you, I want you, I want you, I want you, I want you. Let me ask you this, what do you think is important in a proper relationship? The vampire easily and instantly replied to her lover. Get married, have sex, get pregnant, and repeat? There? I answered your question. Can you reward me with your magnificent, huge, and long dash? Citrinides sighed and shook his head within his mind. Shalltear, you're so troublesome. I feel bad for your vampire brides and what they have to suffer through. He thought to himself. I'll stop you right there. You got the answer wrong. I got it wrong? In that case, will you punish me by whipping my ass and brutally violating my guts while Esteth is forced to watch and can do nothing? Shalltear shouted with a scary excitement. It's like I can only attract crazy women. Citrinides sighed once more, making Shalltear's eyes widen with worry. You just proved my point. Not everything in a proper relationship has to do with fornication. While I would elaborate further, I'm limited on time and need to get back to work. I'm sure you'll find the answers to the question via a book within Ashurbanipal or our colleagues. Goodbye for now, Shalltear. Teleportation. Citrinides disappeared from thin air, leaving Shalltear alone with only her thoughts to accompany her. Ashurbanipal, huh? I'm pretty sure my Lord Pararankino left what he called a romantic ekidigency somewhere there. Yes, that's what I'll do. That'll be my edge against those bitches. Time skip, one day. Scene change. Just like the day before, Citrinides was stationed on his desk within his room, reading another theory book on alchemy. As Citrinides was quite a fan of science back when he was Ajax Dalton, he found grasping alchemy to be relatively easy. This was mainly because alchemy had some similarities with chemistry, one of his favorite subjects. Just exclude the magical shenanigans that come with it. Lord Citrinides, almost like yesterday, a voice of one of the acolytes called out the alchemist's name. However, instead of Rimura, it was Elena. Elena, you're permitted to enter, Citrinides stated as his bedroom doors creaked open. Now, what brings you here? Elena was quick to give a response. The Supreme One requests to meet you, Citrinides. He's currently waiting on the 1st floor of the alchemy lab. Citrinides nodded as he started to walk towards his bedroom door. Thank you, Elena. I believe you should be on your break soon. So, you're permitted to leave for lunch early. You deserve it. The witch bowed and smiled as Citrinides walked up a staircase that led to the main floor where alchemy mainly takes place. Exiting the staircase, Citrinides was met with the skeletal overlord who was in the middle of the alchemy lab, observing all the magical contraptions and the hard-working acolytes. Greetings, Lordins. How may I assist you? Citrinides welcomes with the utmost sincerity. Hello, Citrinides, Ins replied with his typical, regal voice. I'm sorry for coming unannounced. However, I wanted to give you a task. The skeletal mage stated, making the plague doctor temporarily think. Task? Possibly another excursion? Perhaps to the Empire. Oh my god. Citrinides is just staring at me? He's so scary? Jay, just keep it together. You got this. A task from the Supreme One? I'm deeply honored and will complete the task with utmost efficiency, my lord. The response made Ins internally gulp. Ugh, yes, a task. I wanted to see if you could possibly replicate this for me. Opening and taking something out of his inventory, the Overlord pulled out a glowing light blue potion. Unlike typical potions that came in an almost triangular form, the base of this potion was circular. Is that? Citrinida's mind trailed off at the sight before Ins gave a reply. Indeed, this is an MP potion, Ins stated. The statement even made the acolytes in the room interested even though they were told to continue to focus on their work by Ins. Naturally, the Supreme One would have such an item at hand. A potion with its formula long forgotten to Yggdrasil is not out of reach from the likes of you, my lord. In ordinary NPC fashion, Citrinidas did his best to seem impressed and suck up to the salary man. Honestly, that sounds cooler than the shitty devs not wanting everyone up. The skeleton thought. That's right. Back in Yggdrasil, and before your creation, MP potions were one of the most powerful items a being could have. However, the formula to make the sought-after item was lost to time as most of the remaining potions were used up in battles. Short history lesson aside, I came here to give you one of the few Massacre has left to see if you can reverse engineer the magical item as to strengthen Massacre's power. Reverse engineer, huh? Well, I've read enough alchemical theory books to know what to do. If Enphyria could remake the red potion, albeit the product being less efficient, then I sure as hell can do this. Besides, if this is successful, Massacre will only get stronger. A bonus for me. It would be my honor to complete this assignment for you, my lord. Do you want this task done by a certain time frame? Ins shook his head. There is no time frame. So, take as long as you need. Citrinidas bowed. Very well, my lord. I'll provide nothing but results. Ins nodded, passing the MP potion in his hand to Citrinidas, along with a few more before vanishing from thin air using teleportation magic. Welp, this should be an interesting and fun task to do. I'll work on this for the next few days. Time skip, 1 day. Unlike the days before, there was an obnoxious banging on the alchemy lab's entrance door. So loud, that even Citrinidas could hear it from his bedroom underneath the lab. It was as if multiple sledgehammers were hitting the lab's door without rest from very strong bodybuilders. Citrinidas, please let me in, it's very important, shouted Esteth quite desperately. The plague doctor, who was standing in front of the door, shook his head while contemplating whether he should open it or not. I could just ignore it. But if I do, Esteth's tendencies might get worse. Fuck it. Alright. I'm opening the door, Esteth. Doing what he said, Citrinidas opened the magical door as the figure of a beautiful ice queen was slowly revealed. In all her glory, Esteth was dressed in a chef's outfit. That was right. Instead of her typical white general clothing, Esteth was wearing the attire of a chef. With the stereotypical French chef hat and an apron that emphasized her breasts, the Ice Queen looked like a professional in the culinary art. What is this woman's plan? Citrinidas thought to himself, eyeing the blue-haired beauty. Now, what is it that's so important for you to be knocking on the door like that? I'm quite busy with a task Lord Ins assigned me, he stated to Esteth. The Ice Queen only gave a warm smile that contradicted her chilly aura. Well, in that case, why don't I help you relax with this treat I've made? Opening her inventory, Esteth pulled out a slice of cake along with a fork. Oh, well, how thoughtful of you, Esteth. I appreciate your kind offer, the alchemist replied. This time, he was quite genuine with his reply. An unexpected, but welcome surprise. How can I turn down this offer when the cake looks very well made? Besides, I haven't eaten anything in a while. At the core, the slice of cake was mainly chocolate. This was easily identifiable with the cake's rich brown color. Furthermore, the icing also had various shades of brown that could only be from different types of chocolates or flavors. I recall the words once spoken from my creator, Lord Blue Planet, that the way to a man's heart was his mouth. So, I took the liberty of cooking the most exquisite cake a wife such as myself could muster. The Ice Beauty exclaimed with passion. Giving the plate to Citrinidas, who had lifted up his mask and had it rest on his forehead, he picked up the fork and took a bite out of the dessert. It would have been no exaggeration to say that Citrinidas' taste buds lit up like fireworks on a New Year's celebration. This dish is nothing but excellent. He couldn't help but praise Esteth's surprisingly good cooking skills. While they weren't as good as the 41 maids cooking, it was a close call. The Ice Queen let out a squeal of delight like a schoolgirl, putting her hands on her cheeks and slightly blushing. Well, I did make this special cake with a special ingredient, she muttered under her breath. And what would that be, Esteth? My bodily fluids, Q-fu-fu-fu-fu-fu. Citrinidas, though he kept a cool facade externally, could only have his eyes widen and jaw drop internally. Excuse me, did this woman just say bodily fluids? Yeah, once I close this door, I'm gonna wash my mouth with bleach, and then burn this cursed cake to nothing but ash. Oh, well, I have to get back to work. Goodbye for now, Esteth. Citrinidas didn't even give the Ice Queen enough time to reply as he closed the door on her and immediately spit out the piece of cake he was eating. Clean, burn. Muttering both spells, the mess on the floor vanished as the cake burned to nothing. Yep, Esteth is still crazy. I appreciate the effort, but bodily fluids? No. I'll talk with her and Shalltear later as I gotta focus my attention on that potion and Operation Imperium. Time skip, 1 day. Reverse engineering a potion was quite an interesting task. Just like in the real world, for Citrinidas to recreate the MP potion, he needed to gather and analyze its data. For instance, the potion's chemical formula, the brewing process and potency. Then, once all that was taken care of, there was the need to refine the potion to maximize efficiency and minimize manufacturing materials. How much of a certain material made the MP potion more powerful until it started to result in diminishing returns? What type of brewing method was simultaneously both efficient and didn't hinder the potency of the potion? Factors like these were vital in the reverse engineering process of the powerful MP potion. In the end, despite these factors, Citronides finished the whole task within 3 days. Just 1 day before the lizardmen fight the fake Nazaric army. Not that that mattered. The final result was pretty much a carbon copy of the original MP potion. Same blue, glowing liquid. Same circular-shaped vial. And the same rate of mana regeneration. While Citronides did hypothesize this happening, he didn't expect how easy recreating the potion would be. Finishing the task was almost second nature to him. Perhaps it was because he read plenty of theory books, or maybe his lore aided him. Either way, the task was done and that's what mattered. Well, recreating an MP potion was a fun task to do, though, that did get me thinking if I could improve on any aspect of the potion itself. Possibly create an alternate version of the MP potion as a splash potion. I guess I can do that for another day. Back on topic, I'll either give this to the salaryman himself or have an acolyte pass it on to him. Citronides concluded, holding and keenly observing the blue liquid slosh around in its vial. Before he could act on his thoughts, there was a loud knock on the door followed by the pleading of a certain Lolita vampire. Right. I told her to do some research or something on relationships. I forgot about that. The plague doctor gestured to one of the acolytes near him to open the door, which she happily obliged to do. Not before placing the MP potion in hand on the desk next to him. As the acolyte opened the door, the figure of Shalltear was slowly unveiled, who was wearing quite the revealing red dress. Hello, darling. I've successfully done what you graciously asked of me the other day, she exclaimed, giving a warm smile as she skipped toward the unmoving plague doctor. Really? Citronides asked, almost doubting what the vampire said. Shalltear only gave a hum in response, opening her arms for a hug as she got closer to the alchemist. However, in doing so, Shalltear accidentally knocked over the MP potion placed on the workbench next to Citronides. Thankfully, the contents of the potion didn't spill as the glass container has magical properties. Oh, I didn't mean to do that, Citronides. Please forgive me, Shalltear said with regret in her voice. All is forgiven, Shalltear. Just try and be more cautious around my alchemy lab, all right? The vampire only nodded in understanding as Citronides reached for the fallen potion on the floor. However, by the time Citronides had his hand on the potion, he felt another on top of his. Oh my, we touched hands while reaching for the same object on the floor, Shalltear exclaimed. From the romantic Ecce Doujinshi I read, we must go on a date. Well, this is better than fucking her. Chapter 22, Imperium. Time skip, 6 days. Narrator's POV. A mighty panda-like demi-human of unfathomable strength sat on his lavish golden throne. Even by simply resting on his royal seat, the aura the figure radiated suggested nothing but vigor. This being was none other than the king of the beastmen nation, Clafuth. The king tapped one of his claws on his armrest in repetition, deep in thought about current events. More specifically, the recent savior of the Dragon Kingdom, Orden Carries, and his adventurer Team Hope. Those bastards. The panda demi-human clicked his tongue before giving a low growl. Their sudden appearance has single-handedly flipped all my plans in that measly human country. It's only a matter of time before they retake those cities and counterattack, backed by a rejuvenated populace and those neighboring human countries. The king clenched his fist tightly but resisted the urge to smash his armrest to smithereens. At the end of the day, this only leaves me with 2 options. A war of attrition that could eventually lead to our defeat. Or, I round up the army and launch a full-scale invasion on the Dragon Kingdom to get rid of that damned team. The latter would make farming the humans less viable along with leaving my eastern borders more vulnerable. Fucking Minotaurs and Sea City fucks. Clafuth grit his teeth as he succumbed to the temptation of smashing his fist onto the side of his armrest. Damn it. He shouted with uncapped rage as his voice echoed throughout the throne room and even outside it. Wanting to calm down, Clafuth decided to have some fun with a female human. Servant? Get me a human girl at once. He shouted from his throne room to a servant he knew was stationed outside. There was no reply. I said. Clafuth took in a deep breath before screaming. Get me a human girl at once? Do I have to repeat myself? That was a fucking order. Again, no response. What the? Something isn't right. Clafuth, realizing something was wrong, stopped shouting and went on alert. Though the throne room was noiseless before the king called for a servant, when he noticed something was off, it was as if the air suddenly became heavier. With extreme prudence, Clafuth got off of his lavish seat, carefully examining his surroundings. Everything seemed normal. The paintings, the flags, and the statues of himself. They all were regular and unaltered. Despite that, the king couldn't help but feel watched. Who the fuck is hiding from me? I demand you reveal yourself at once, fucker. Comply, and I'll contemplate not turning you into a lifeless husk of flesh and bones. Clafuth said with his usual deep and gruff voice that could scare a room full of men. Quitetattitud, claughutH. The very furs on Clafuth's body never stood so tall out of pure emotions as they did now. Not when his father died at the hands of the great Minotaur nation, not when hope appeared, and certainly not when the Sea City broke their truce. Similar to surround sound in a cinema, the ominous voice sounded like it came from all directions. The king turned his head to where he thought the voice originated from, but to no avail. What have you done to my men? Where are you hiding? Clawfoot did his best to put up a front, but couldn't help but let out a stutter from the fear he was feeling. The ominous voice replied again. RightOverhere. Unlike before, the mysterious voice didn't seem to come from every direction, but from one particular point within the throne room. At the very corner of the room, where the light was mostly absent, there was the faintest outline of a humanoid that you could barely make out. Dressed in a dark gray robe that covered his entire body along with a white bird mask, the figure stepped out of the shadows. This being was none other than Citronides, who radiated an aura of mystery and ominousness to those around him. Clawfoot's mind raced with many different thoughts. Who the fuck is this bitch? I can't tell if he's either weak or strong. Only that he gives off an ominous aura. A total mystery. The king thought to himself. Who the hell are you? He questioned the cryptic plague doctor. My name is Citronides, a humble servant of Massacre. It's a pleasure to finally meet you in the flesh, Clawfoot. The alchemist spoke in his typical, well-mannered tone that slightly irritated the king. Massacre? What the fuck is that? A country? Organization? I best keep note of this. Can't say the same for you, Citronides, Clawfoot replied in an almost mocking and gruff voice. What have you done to my men and what the hell do you want? The king emphasized my and hell before giving an intimidating growl. To answer your first question, your men outside are paralyzed, so to speak. As for your second one, I have a proposition for you. I say proposition, though it is more or less an ultimatum. Either submit to me by your own volition, or I force you to. Clawfoot's eyes widened with rage. Submit? To you? Why would I, the king of the beastmen nation, bow down to some unknown fleshbag weakling? I'll tear you to fucking shreds. Even though deep in his heart that antagonizing the being in front of him wasn't the best of choices, his beastman and kingly pride wouldn't allow him to do so. Within an instant, Clawfoot got into a fighting stance before jumping into the air toward the alchemist's direction. The ground beneath him slightly shattered from the force of propelling himself upwards. The king screamed a mighty war cry, raising his right hand in preparation to attack. Despite this, the plague doctor didn't move from his position. Instead, only met the fierce gaze of the demi-human as a white glow shone from within his left eye socket. Adamantite claws. The claws on Clawfoot's hand changed color and grew bigger with each passing second, turning from its typical black to a gorgeous silver that radiated an aura of power. Don't you dare say such foolishness to my face. Now, enjoy being mauled to death. Citronides only hummed before taking any action. Interesting. Forced deceleration. With the cast of a fairly powerful 9th tier spell, the speed Clawfoot was charging towards Citronides suddenly ceased as he was pretty much frozen in midair. Forced deceleration was the same spell Citronides used against Shalltear. However, due to the strength difference between Shalltear and Clawfoot, along with the tier of the spell, the king moved significantly slower compared to the bloody Valkyrie. So much so that Citronides could give an entire monologue while the king barely moved a millimeter. Think of the spell's effects like having different weights on you. For Shalltear, forced deceleration was the equivalent of trying to move while having to carry a really heavy school bag. It was more of a nuisance than anything else. In contrast, what Clawfoot felt was like trying to move with 50 concrete bricks tied to your legs. In other words, he was frozen in place. From what appraisal told me, Clawfoot is within the realm of heroes. While I haven't personally seen them, he should be slightly stronger than the demi-humans generals and remedios. However, he's not above level 40. Considering most beings are under level 30, this is quite significant. Weakling, you say? Citronides replied in an almost condescending tone, eyeing the beastman frozen in midair. What? What have you done to me? Let me the fuck out or I'll bite your fucking head off. Clawfoot did his best to thrash and break free from his invisible weights, but this resulted in no success. I don't think you're in any position to ask questions, let alone threaten me. The plague doctor kept his polite tone, which only made him sound scarier. He then proceeded to raise his hand before casting a 5th tier spell. Maximize magic, food poisoning. The moment the alchemist muttered those words, Clawfoot felt unbearable pain in his abdomen. It was as if the area was abruptly punched 100 times in the span of a second. Hablerg. The king, who was already nauseous and profusely sweating, couldn't help but spew out his latest meal and stomach acid from sickness. I'll fucking kill yo Blarg. Clawfoot puked again as he felt his health and pride slowly crumble away. Well, the spell is on the weaker side of what I can do. It isn't melting your organs or anything, just giving you a really bad case of food poisoning. Nonetheless, it's equally as painful. As the name suggested, food poisoning was a spell that gave the target food poisoning, stomach cramps, nausea, vomiting, fevers and diarrhea. While it doesn't kill its target, food poisoning does its job at making the opponent feel like total shit. I gave you the choice between two options and you chose the harder one. Now, you can either submit or experience more needless suffering. I do hope you change your mind soon, Clawfoot. Diluted poison of Ouroboros. The pain Clawfoot experienced only got worse as he was forced to inhale a light green mist that entered his mouth. What the fuck was erg? The previous vomiting of stomach acid quickly turned into a mixture of white foam and blood as he wheezed in agony. The huge muscles around the king's body started to twitch. They were slow at first, only affecting the fingers. But, they quickly caught speed and became more severe. After a couple of seconds, most muscles in his body were uncontrollably contracting, causing an agonizing amount of pain. Diluted poison of Ouroboros was the watered-down variant of the more powerful original. And just like with any diluted version of a stronger spell, there were limitations as to what it could do. For example, not having blood excrete from every orifice in the body. Furthermore, this also meant that the spell wouldn't kill its target. A bonus for making opponents feel extreme pain. Clawfoot gasped for air whenever his mouth wasn't filled with puke, blood, and foam. Fuck, why you, bitch. Will kill you. He murmured in a raspy and broken voice from the pain he felt. His pride as a beastman and a ruler refused to bow down to the plague doctor toying with him. It's a shame, really. All you're doing is putting more of a burden on yourself. Well, if you want to keep refusing to submit to my will, so be it. The alchemist shrugged at the king's decision as he raised his hand again. Maximize magic, mustard gas, triplet maximize magic, open wounds. Just like with diluted poison of Ouroboros before, a yellowish-brown gas quickly surrounded Clawfoot's body and seeped into every orifice it possibly could enter. Clawfoot couldn't even formulate any words as he was severely coughing from his lungs being irritated. Hell, he was hyperventilating from how little oxygen he was getting from his mouth being obscured by different bodily liquids. The very furs and the skin beneath his demi-human body started to smolder from the chemical contact. Not just typical burns from mustard gas. No, it was like the chemical gas was melting each layer of fur and skin one by one wherever it touched. As bad as the damage Clawfoot's body faced, the pain he currently experienced was 3 times worse due to the use of metamagic on open wounds. If what he was feeling before was like having all his fingers broken, then what he was feeling now would have been like having both femurs shattered. Some may call me cruel, but from what I've seen, Clawfoot really enjoys having his way with female humans he gets from those captured cities. This is the least I could do to avenge the innocent souls brutally violated and killed off, Citronides thought to himself, observing the suffering king. At this point, Clawfoot gave up his pride as a ruler and a demi-human from the excruciating pain he was experiencing. Give up. His speech was slurred and hoarse like he was a drunk man after running a marathon as he gargled out the disgusting mix of blood, vomit and foam. Good choice, Citronides simply stated as he took out a splash potion from his inventory and threw it at the hovering body of the panda. The glass potion's concoction shattered from impact as it covered Clawfoot in a liquid substance before being absorbed into his skin. Unexpectedly for the king, all the pain he was feeling ceased as he fell to the floor, not being affected by forced deceleration anymore. The ground once more cracked under the sudden weight of the panda as he got up to face the plague doctor. Clean. That wasn't so hard, was it? The alchemist rhetorically asked, making Clawfoot want to click his tongue. However, the panda didn't dare do such a stupid action. Not after what torment he went through. Only a fool akin to Remedios or Philip could do such a thing. Clawfoot knelt on one knee and begrudgingly asked what was needed of his new master. What is it that you desire, Lord Citronides? The king's previous confidence and arrogance almost entirely vanished. In its place, a fearful and stuttering mess doing its best to hold itself together and putting up a false facade. Straight to the point, I like that? The plague doctor noted before replying to Clawfoot's question. I have a couple of orders for you first. Do them well, and you will be rewarded. Fail, and you suffer the consequences. I don't believe you need a reminder of what happens if you disobey. Understood. Citronides' tone shifted from a more professional and polite one to an almost mocking one. Loud and clear, my lord, Clawfoot said, still filled with slight fear in his heart and struggling to accept the sudden change. Getting to the topic, I'm sure you're well aware of that new adventurer team in the Dragon Kingdom. The one that goes by Hope, right? Clawfoot nodded once, confirming Citronides' question. Until the time comes, which I'll let you know when, you are to continue to send raid parties to attack Hope directly, nearby villages and cities. The raid parties should be roughly the same size as the one you sent to attack Karka village and Klebus near the wastelands. The plague doctor concluded. Then I shall enact your will, my lord. Though perplexed, the king didn't dare ask for the reason why and only agreed to the simple order. I have no clue why he'd want such a thing. Is Citronides working in cahoots with Hope? Never mind that the only thing I know is that my men would be given death sentences from those orders. Shit. What a king I am to kill off good soldiers. My father would surely be disappointed with what has become of me. Now, I'd like some information on what's going on in the center of the continent. You can start with the Great Minotaur Nation and work your way from there. The more information the better. But, I don't want a full-blown explanation. More general knowledge. Citronides said to the kneeling king. It wasn't like Citronides truly needed the information as he was in no rush. Hell, it would be at least a couple of years in the future until Massacre starts dealing with the East. It was more or less his human mind wanting to uncover the hidden and incomplete lore of his favorite light novel/anime. Clawfoot couldn't help but let out a slight growl at the mentioning of the Great Minotaur Nation. Growling? Did I perhaps upset you? Is this simple request too much for a king of your caliber? The plague doctor questioned in a way impossible to distinguish if he was genuinely asking a question or simply mocking Clawfoot. No, my lord. The panda stuttered out, realizing his mistake by growling and what torment he could expect from such action. I'm more than capable of informing you about the central continent. It's just that I hold a grudge against the Great Minotaur Nation. Really? For what reason? Citronides questioned, quite intrigued by the statement. In short, they launched an attack on this nation's soil in the hopes to gain more power and resources years ago. My father, the previous king, was killed by weapons left by the boastful sage. That's why I hold a grudge. The king did his best not to raise his voice due to anger and fear of upsetting the alchemist. Well, I'd ask what a king was doing on a battlefield. But, unlike human rulers, demi-humans here have the pride and strength to fight with their soldiers. It's oddly respectable, Citronides thought to himself. On an unrelated note, the mention of the great Minotaur nation and the Minotaur sage does make me want to explore the country. Something to look forward to in the future, I guess. Interesting, very interesting. Please, continue with your explanation, Clafoth. Citronides spoke politely as the king nodded once. Despite my grudge, there's a tense peace with the country. We and the great Minotaur nation have troops guarding our respective borders in case they decide to attack us or vice versa. However, that most likely won't happen as we currently have different goals. My nation is dealing with expanding to the northwest where the human nations are located while pushing back occasional attacks from the sea city. The Minotaurs on the other hand are dealing with the beastmen Commonwealth on their eastern borders. Clafoth stated as Citronides processed the information carefully. Right, the beastmen Commonwealth was mentioned in the web novel. Just like there are multiple human nations, there are multiple beastmen nations. I wasn't sure if they'd appear here. Then again, the god dragon was also here and was only mentioned in the web novel. The plague doctor thought. Are you allies with the beastmen Commonwealth? The king was quick to respond. That's correct, my lord. Due to our similarities in military strength, race, and a common enemy, we have a more positive relationship. Citronides nodded before gesturing for Clafoth to continue speaking. Next is the Troll Kingdom. They're considered one of the larger demi-human nations in the central continent as they neighbor east of the Centaur Plains. A flat grassland that stretches far and wide. I don't know much due to vast distances except that tensions are rising between them and the equestrian king. I'm sorry if this displeases you, my lord. Externally, Clafoth was less of a stuttering mess and kept his composure. However, his mind was still filled with fear as he didn't know if his lack of knowledge would result in him being brutally punished. Citronides gave a short lesson in education to the king. That's to be expected, Clafoth. These countries are quite a distance away, so not knowing things is understandable. As a pawn of Massacre, you should be well aware of your surroundings. Shit. Clafoth screamed to himself within his mind. Would this result in me facing the consequences Citronides mentioned earlier? Is he making me out to be a fool? As much as a powerful being I am, I could never fight this monster. My pride is utterly shattered. As a king, I should have educated myself better. In that case, I shall take your words of wisdom into heart, Lord Citronides. You may proceed with your explanation. The king nodded as he continued to speak. While still fighting for power, the bordering orc nation has a close relationship with the Troll Kingdom as orcs and trolls live in relative harmony. However, this close relationship is mostly due to a joint effort in containing the undead within the dead zone located at Mount Catenias. The bonus novel, how interesting. Citronides let out a slight smirk under his plague doctor mask. Cure Elim should be at the epic entree of it all, creating his undead army to combat players. I wonder when I should report this to the salaryman? There's no need to mention it now. Maybe in a couple of years? I'll just go with the flow for the time being. Citronides gestured with his hand for the Beastman King to continue talking. Further east past the Dead Zone is a nation that goes by the Mithratriton monarchy, and to their northern borders is a country called the Undergrowth Confederation. They're the last of the big 6 nations aiming for total control, rivaling the Troll Kingdom in size. Now that made Citronides raise an eyebrow in curiosity. Those must be the 2 unnamed countries at the center of the continent. Citronides summed up. If I knew more about those countries, then I would tell you, my lord. All I know is that the Confederation is made up of multiple plant-based heteromorphs and is at war with the monarchy. At least, that's what I heard from third-hand accounts. Of course, there are many other countries on the central continent. However, those are the main 6. Citronides tapped his foot repeatedly as he processed everything. Well, I guess my mind is satisfied with the information presented to me. It'll be a couple of years in the future until Nazarick deals with all that. We need to deal with Argland and the theocracy first before venturing east, he concluded. In that case, I thank you for enlightening me about the situation in the central continent. For now, that information isn't going to be needed as I was merely curious. Just focus on what I told you to do earlier. I'll have a shadow demon watch over every step of yours in a moment's time. Don't fail me. Within an instant, Citronides vanished from thin air, as if he was never there in the first place, leaving Clafoth by himself in his throne room. Next chapter, Insect Battle Maids Aren't That Bad. Chapter 23, Insect Battle Maids Aren't That Bad. Time skip, 10 days. Citronides POV. What a beautiful looking city. Too bad it'll be thrown into turmoil by Jaldabaoth. I mused under my breath. I observed the many fantasy-like buildings from where I was situated, that being the roof of the overgrown mansion where Mare would subdue Hilma with his druid staff. In all honesty, there wasn't really much of a point in me being here. I wasn't going to fight the Raven Black hero to cement his status as a hero of his time. In fact, inserting myself in the fight would only make things more convoluted. I came here for only 2 reasons. Firstly, would be talking to Entima after her fight with Evil Eye, and secondly, witnessing the demonic incursion with my own 2 eyes. After all, it isn't every day you get to see a capital city sieged by demons. It's one thing in an anime or a movie, but a whole different thing in real life. As I was lost in surveying the peaceful view, I could make out a low buzz of what could only be multiple insects flapping their wings simultaneously from within the mansion I stood atop. The buzzing got louder as a variety of insects flew out the building's many windows, carrying multiple riches before flying past me. Entima's insect servants, huh? Her fight with Blue Rose should happen at any moment now, I thought to myself, slightly eager to watch the fight and then convince the battle maid to not want Evil Eye dead. In that case, perfect unknowable dot. The reason for this was quite simple. Evil Eye was too valuable to kill off. Not only was she over 250 years old, allowing us to peer into the past, but she also has a powerful talent. A talent so strong it's considered within the top 10 most powerful talents in Overlord. Spell copy allows the individual to copy any type of spell of any rank. This includes super tier and wild magic. Albeit the spell needs to be used once before being able to use the talent again. Nonetheless, killing Evil Eye wouldn't be the best of choices as her talent would benefit Massacre. I'm not sure whether convincing Entima is going to be an easy or tough task. Oh well, I'll have to wait and see. I trailed off of my thoughts as I saw Gagaran get into her stance, gripping her mighty hammer as she faced the insect battle maid. Everything proceeded like it did in the anime, minus the crappy CGI. With the help of her bugs, Entima wielded a multitude of weapons that pummeled the shit out of the adamantite adventurer. And just when all hope was lost, the vampire princess and the assassin Tia jumped in. More fighting ensued as a mini-light show formed from all the casting and explosions of spells. Gagaran swung her hammer, Tia did assassin stuff, and Evil Eye cast more magic. Hell, Entima even used a bug that turned her hand into a mini machine gun. As the fight went on, I found myself fascinated by Evil Eye's spell, Verminbane. While I already knew of its existence thanks to the anime, I couldn't help but hypothesize about its uniqueness from seeing it in action. An original spell made in the new world, how interesting. If Evil Eye and Flunder could make original spells, who's to say that a level 100 being like myself can't make an original spell? I mean, I did reverse engineer an MP potion that couldn't be made anymore in Yggdrasil. That does bring into question my 300 spell limit. However, we're not bound by Yggdrasil game rules anymore. I trailed off my thoughts once more, brooding on the idea of creating new spells and the possibilities of Evil Eye's powerful talent. However, the sudden halt of shouting magical spells and the clashing of weapons brought me back to reality. Just like in the anime, Entima was defeated, lying on the ground battered and bloody. The members of Blue Rose didn't come out unscathed though. Their faces were bruised as they heavily gasped for air and put their hands on their knees from tiredness. Before Evil Eye could finish off the insect battle maid for good, a wild Jaldabaoth appeared. Following the anime, Jaldabaoth sent Entima flying away to safety with a carrier bug before introducing himself to the Blue Rose members. In that case, it should be time for me to go. I'll make sure to inform Demiurge about my plans for Evil Eye once this is over so he doesn't do anything drastic. I said to myself, casting fly and following Entima through the night sky. Rather quickly, the carrier bug landed by another abandoned building not too far from where Evil Eye would face Yuri Alpha and CZ2128 Delta. The Pleiades battle maids who were conversing with each other before their battle, took notice of their sister being dropped off in front of them. I descended to the ground a couple of meters behind Entima's body as the carrier bug left. As I took a few steps forwards, I heard an audible gasp of shock from most of the battle maids. Taking the mannerisms of a 14th century duchess, Yuri Alpha covered her mouth with a hand, giving a quick gasp as her eyes slightly widened. Lupus Regina Beta's facial expression was that of a conflicted one. Torn between feeling sadness from seeing her sister's current state and happiness from, well, seeing her sister's current state. Well, she is the smiling sadist after all. I guess that's to be expected from her. I thought to myself. Solution Epsilon showed more emotion than I expected. I would have thought the blonde beauty would be more expressionless. However, that wasn't the case. While she didn't gasp like Yuri Alpha, nor tilt her head like CZ2128 Delta, her eyes suggested nothing but hidden rage. Sister, what in the name of the Supreme One happened to you? Yuri muttered under her breath, eyeing the motionless and brutally beaten-up body of her younger sister. The blonde-haired beauty could only nod at the eldest sister's question. Well, seeing that I have eyes, I could only come to the logical conclusion that Entima got hurt. Lupus Regina replied in a jokingly manner, causing Yuri Alpha to karate chop the werewolf's head from the remark. Now is not the time for such banter, Lupus Regina, Yuri stated professionally, making Lupus Regina slightly pout before rubbing her head where her elder sister hit her. Lord Citronidas, Yuri Alpha turned her attention to me, slightly stuttering before quickly regaining composure. Seeing how you were following Entima moments ago, could you please fill us in as to what happened to our dearest sister? She pleaded as she fidgeted with her hands. Why of course, Yuri Alpha, I replied. However, the explanation will have to be brief as I need to talk with Entima before you enact the Supreme One's plans here. Is that all right with you? I asked, to which the battle maids nodded in understanding. In short, Entima met her match with an interesting member from Blue Rose. While she did lose the battle, she fought valiantly until Demiurge sent her flying here. I summed up. Well, whoever beat up Entima like this, I'll gladly eat up and make them suffer. Q-fu-fu-fu-fu-fu. Solution said, making me quickly interject. Typically, I wouldn't mind. However, the individual in question is quite a valuable asset for Massacre. I suggest putting your hatred aside until I have no use for the individual. Though she sighed, Solution nodded. Very well, Lord Citronidas, she said before Lupus Regina raised a hand. Lupus Regina, if you're asking about healing her, don't worry. I'll take care of things in that department. The werewolf slowly put her hand down. Now, if you don't mind, could you all wait inside the building? I need to talk with Entima privately, I asked politely. The battlemaids nodded as they quickly left to go inside the building, leaving me with the battered insect battlemaid next to me. Reaching for my inventory, I took out a rather potent healing potion. Twisting off the cap of the vial, I poured its contents on Entima before her body glowed. As quickly as the light emanated from her body, it vanished, restoring every visible injury. The battlemaid slowly got up from the floor before properly standing, raising her head due to the height difference. If it weren't for cold-blooded, along with already knowing Entima's true form from the anime, I would have taken a step back from slight fear. Hell, anyone would do the same. However, being transported to the new world, I'm already used to things like this. Her true form reminded me of Shalltear's. A gaping maw filled with sharp teeth along with a set of pedipalps that lie on each side of the mouth. That, along with multiple red eyes that are typical of a spider which metaphorically stared into your soul. Thankfully, the battlemaid quickly summoned her face bug back, restoring her previous looks. Greetings, Entima, I started. While I do need to talk with you, I must first say that I hope you're feeling better after your fight with those Blue Rose members. You fought vigorously, aiding the Supreme One in his 10,000-year grand plan. I have nothing but respect for you. The battlemaid didn't respond, only tilting her head downwards from my gaze. Is something wrong, Entima? I questioned. The insect battlemaid only put her bug-like hands together as she tilted her head to face away from my body. What's up with her? Entima isn't usually like this. She seems almost sad. Maybe some words of encouragement will get her to speak. It's okay to speak, Entima. The people of Massacre, myself included, deeply care for you. There's no need to be sad or afraid. I can put the reason why I need to talk to you privately aside for the time being. Please, speak your mind. I gave out some hopefully encouraging words my mind could conjure up at the moment to get the bugmaid to speak. Lord Citronidas. Entima's voice was harsh and grating, guttural and gravelly. It was the polar opposite of her previously cute voice. Similar to someone messing with the settings on a microphone, the battlemaid's true voice fluctuated from being deep to high-pitched and everything in between within a rapid time frame. Isn't my voice and appearance a blunder? Master Genjuro had to use lip bugs and masks to cover my true form. I am ugly, so ugly my own creator couldn't stand to see me. I am nothing but a disgrace to Lord Genjuro's great legacy. I quickly interrupted the battlemaid from speaking by putting a hand on her shoulder. That isn't true. Not in the slightest. Though my voice had an echo effect as usual that made it nigh impossible to discern any emotions when I talked, I did my absolute best to sound sincere and kind. Right, if I recall from the fight, Evil Eye insulted the looks of her true form along with her master. Guess I'm gonna act like a therapist now. I put those thoughts aside as I looked straight at Entima whilst thinking about what to say next. Listen to me, Entima. And listen well. You have never been a failure and never will. Lord Genjuro never hated you. No, he loved you like his own daughter. As for your voice and mask, they were made not to hide you from shame. You, along with your sisters, were created to form an infiltration unit of sorts. As such, due to your arachnoid biology, you had to appear human to blend in. I did my best to make Entima feel better about herself. After all, I couldn't have a proper discussion with someone if they were not in the right headspace or mood. I mean, I could have just said what I needed to say and be done with things. However, that would have been not polite of me, thus being out of character. Besides, doing that would just be a shitty thing for me to do. Is that true? Does Lord G. New Jersey IRO not hate me? Entima questioned in her distorted voice, looking right where my eyes would be if not covered by my plague doctor mask. I simply nodded at her question. Why would he? After all, you're his magnum opus, his prized creation. Lord Citrinitas, Entima said in a low voice. Would Lord Genjiro be angry at me for losing the voice he bestowed upon me? Her tone, though guttural, sounded like a young child asking a question to their parents. I knelt down on one knee, still keeping my arm on her shoulder for comfort. With how much Lord Genjiro cared for you, I don't believe that he could get angry at you for losing that voice. Besides, I'll get you a new voice soon. You don't have to worry about that, I assure you. I'll admit, my words did sound ominous from an outside perspective. However, that wasn't the case in reality. As an alchemist, I could simply create an artificial lip bug for the insect battlemaid. What did you actually think I implied? That I'd painfully steal some random worker's voice from the Empire? Entima fidgeted with her hands a bit more before speaking again. Thank you, Lord Citrinitas. She trailed off, slightly tilting her head away from me once more as if she was shy or embarrassed. Okay, I thought to myself. That was easier than expected. Now I need to tell Entima to let me deal with Evil Eye. Not sure how well she's gonna react to that. Only one way to find out. You're welcome, I started. Now, before you go to battle soon, I would like to have a discussion with you about Evil Eye, the person in the red robe and mask that you fought not long ago. Entima turned her head to face me before speaking. Evilia, I hate her, she said with anger. Yes, and justifiably so, I replied. While I understand your disdain for Evil Eye, simply killing her would do more harm than good. Entima seemed to agree with my words as she nodded before speaking. Yes, I should make her suffer unbearable pie dash. Close, but not quite. I was quick to stop Entima from speaking before she got any other ideas. From my observations, Evil Eye is a special individual in the new world. While this is a lot to ask considering she caused you to feel immense pain, I was hoping you could let me deal with her. This is so I could conduct tests on her and hopefully strengthen Massacre. Of course, I'll let you use her as you see fit once there is no need of her. I made sure to say that last part in the hopes it would convince her to agree. Entima seemed to ponder my offer as she put a hand on her face-bug chin. Very well, Lord Citronidas. That seems fine with me. I internally hummed as I heard Entima's response. That was relatively easy. I may have exaggerated the experimenting on Evil Eye part, but that did seem to do its charm. I mean, if push comes to shove, I'll do what I have to do. However, what will most likely end up happening is just convincing Evil Eye to side with Massacre. Fantastic, now we have that settled, I'd best be going now. Your sisters are waiting inside the building here. See you later. I was interrupted from speaking when the battle maid spoke once more. Lord Citronidas, she called out. Can I have a hug? A hug? I thought to myself, slightly caught off guard by the battle maid's request. She seemed almost reluctant and embarrassed when saying that when looking at her body language. Tilting her head away from me once more, fidgeting with her hands. You get the idea. And never mind, I'm being dash. I cut her off as I used my hand on her shoulder to bring her closer to me. Within an instant, Entima was embraced in a friendly hug. See Citronidas, she called out, shocked I listened to her request. You've been through a lot today. A hug is the least you deserve. Snapping back from her shock, Entima reciprocated in kind by wrapping her arms around my back. She buried her head within my grey robes and stayed there. And no, before you get any ideas, this hug was simply to make Entima feel better. Similar to how you'd hug a crying friend or colleague. The warm embrace lasted for no less than a couple of seconds before Entima let go. I stopped kneeling and stood up before speaking. Now seeing that I've come what I needed to do, I'll be heading back to Massacre now. I bid you farewell, Entima. Until next time. Gate. Entima watched as I opened a portal to Massacre. She waved her insectoid hands while saying goodbye in her distorted voice as I stepped through the purple swirl before disappearing from sight, leaving the battle maid on her lonesome. Narrator's POV. Seeing as the alchemist left, Entima quickly turned her head towards the abandoned building a couple meters away as Citronidas mentioned earlier that her sisters were waiting there. Wasting no time, the Entima walked towards the entrance before opening the door, catching the attention of her sisters. Entima, Lupus Regina exclaimed, raising her arms in the air in excitement whilst dropping her crosier to the ground. You're healed up? Citronidas did do a really good job at it, huh? She rhetorically asked. Well, he is a plague doctor, after all. Yuri added before clearing her throat. Anyways, I'm glad you're back to full health. The Dullahan stated, regaining her composure and professionalism as she adjusted her glasses. However, and please forgive my curiosity, but what did Citronidas talk about to you? If you don't mind, of course. Yuri questioned. Notice, while I do not know for certain, I could only assume Citronidas wanted to talk about something important after Entima's fight considering he wanted privacy. CZ2128 Delta stated in her signature robotic and emotionless voice. He simply wanted to personally deal with the Blue Rose member that hurt me as she caught his attention. Nothing more, nothing less. Yuri nodded to the arachnid's reply. Citronidas sure is kind, Yuri said to herself with Lupus Regina agreeing with her statement. Notice, Citronidas' mysterious nature makes it so that even kindness is unknown. Not even my processors can know what emotions he's truly feeling. The automaton stated. For Citronidas to care for you like that, you sure are lucky. Yuri, Lupus, and Narbarl only dream for Citronidas to do things like that. The two older sisters cleared their throats after Solution said that. Notice, following the Supreme One's plan, we must get ready for battle soon. CZ2128 Delta stated as the others prepared themselves. However, unlike them, the arachnid was caught up in her thoughts. What is this feeling? I felt it when Citronidas hugged me. She thought to herself as new emotions surged through her body. She could only compare it to having butterflies in her stomach. No, it was more like hunger. Not a hunger for human flesh like she typically felt, but a different kind of hunger. A hunger for love and affection. Next chapter, Archie's fate. Chapter 24, Archie's fate. Time skip, 26 days. Citronidas POV. Today was a pretty significant day in the grand scheme of things. No, the denizens of Massacre weren't celebrating a joyous event such as a holiday or a birthday. Today was the day that workers from the Baharuth Empire were invading the great tomb of Massacre. I say invade, but that couldn't be further from the truth. It was more like sealing the fates of adventurers to their doom by having them brutally killed for the NPC's amusement, or tortured also for the NPC's amusement. Honestly, a part of me was quite excited about the event. Not because of the people being unknowingly sent here to meet their demise. After all, I'm not a monster. Maybe a villain for the plans I have for Cerebrit and other assholes like him in the new world. But by no means a monster. This was mostly because it has almost been a month since the events of the demonic incursion within Riestei's. And while day-to-day activities are fun for the most part, events such as the demonic incursion make those days seem plain. However, I didn't just sit in my alchemy lab for almost a month. I took the mantle of Ordincaries for a bit to complete some staged beastmen quests alongside dealing with the shenanigans of Esdeath and Shalltear in and out of Massacre. I even artificially recreated Entima's old voice. I was currently in my alchemy lab as usual, but instead of making potions, scrolls, and the like, I was watching the different worker groups with a mirror of remote viewing. Funnily enough, a few of the acolytes were crowding around me to watch the event unfold. Team Foresight and the chubby man in silver armor were fighting some weak-leveled undead in some hallway, the old man and his team were waiting outside the tomb, and the cocky guy with the elven slaves was heading towards Hamsook. Acaria huffed, crossing her arms at the sight of the invaders. Pitiful humans. Even when presented with the generous offer of gold and jewels, their greed for more treasures within this great tomb blinds them. The acolyte muttered with clear disdain in her voice. Her acolyte colleagues were quick to agree, nodding their heads. Indeed. How dare these vermin abuse the Supreme One's generosity? Rimuru added, taking slight pauses in between speaking to think of how to describe the invading workers. I still forget that even my acolytes or the maids within Nazareth hate humans. From the outside, they seem caring. Yet the insides are a different story. I thought to myself, looking at the mirror as the workers progressed through Nazareth. Well, at their core, humans are driven by instinct. Thus, it's in their nature to be filled with avarice, Rimuru. I said to the acolyte-dressed maid in a rather ambiguous tone. It's amusing, really. They can be as greedy as dragons, yet as selfless as angels. I briefly reflected on a past life that seemed so distant. Auschwitz and Unit 731 reminded me of how vicious humans can be. Concentration camps and genocide, mass censorship, horrible crimes committed by people, you get the idea. Of course, there were plenty of other examples I could think of. However, those two were the first that came to mind. Throwing away those negative memories, I also remembered all the good things humans from my past life did. From small acts of kindness like buying a meal for a starving stranger to bioengineers developing malaria test kits so cheap that the poor can have access to them. My quick reminiscing of the past was swiftly ended when the acolytes gave a collective gasp of wonder. Citrinita's wisdom never ceases to amaze me, muttered a sweet but quiet voice to the side of me when the others gasped. A voice that was different from Rimuru's, Elena's, and Acaria's. The acolyte's name was Frey, a rather friendly person who'd get along with nearly everyone, except for disgusting humans, per usual with Nazareth denizens. Similar to Acaria, Frey had snow-white hair, ruby-colored eyes, and a plague doctor outfit. However, that's where the similarities ended. For one, she didn't have one of her eyes covered by her hair. Speaking of, her hair extended down to her waist, the opposite of Acaria's shoulder-length hair. Furthermore, Frey's plague doctor outfit was more of a dress instead of a butler outfit. A/N, I wanted to introduce a new acolyte because I have that power, lol. While Frey's appearance is very short in this chapter, she'll appear more as the story progresses. Smiley face. I appreciate the compliment, Frey, I spoke, making the acolyte jump from slight surprise and lightly gasp, not expecting to be heard. The others around her slightly giggled at her reaction before calming down. Now, I got off from where I was seated as my assistants moved back to give me some room. If you'll excuse me, I'll be heading out to the 6th floor for a while. You ladies can keep watching the spectacle happening in the mirror, I don't mind at all. Besides, you're all working hard on the latest experiment and deserve a bit of an extra break, I said as the acolytes gave a warm smile. Thank you for your generosity, Lord Citrinitas, Elena exclaimed cheerily. Frey was also quick to say a few words. Your kindness seems to never end, milord. But there is no need to give us a break as we take pride in serving you, she pleaded, holding her hands together. I dismissed the comments as I formed an incantation on my right hand, casting a 10th tier spell. Well, the option for a break is still there if you need it. In any case, I must depart. I bid you a temporary farewell, acolytes. Gate. In an instant, a majestic purple swirl formed directly in front of me. Wasting no time, I stepped through as the scene around me changed from my alchemy lab to the top of a coliseum. As quickly as the portal formed, it closed once I was at my destination. I would have immediately taken a moment to admire the fictional starry sky if it weren't for the loud voice of Aura, acting almost like an announcer for a certain worker team trapped at the center of the amphitheater I stood atop. And against them, the master of the great tomb of Nazareth, the supreme overlord. In's owl gown. Perfect timing, I thought to myself, eyeing the team Foresight rather keenly. Everything proceeded as did in the anime. Firstly, the leader of the worker group, Hecarin Termite, decided to talk his way out of the fight at the sight of the Overlord. Surprise surprise, that didn't turn out well for him as all he did was enrage the salaryman. No, simply saying enrage wasn't enough of a description. The sheer anger Ins felt was similar to the rage you'd experience when talking to a chubby Karen on a go-kart in a Target, except worse. Far worse. Even from the highest point in the amphitheater, I could feel the aura of absolute fury emanating from the Overlord. Thankfully, cold-blooded did its charm in keeping me calm and fearless as it always has. Unlike Aura down below, I wasn't bothered by his untamed rage. While Ins was busy letting his anger run loose, with Team Foresight and Aura doing their best to hold themselves together and not being blown away, I focused my attention on another individual. Standing to the side and slightly behind the Overlord was none other than my sister, Albedo. She, just like myself, was also unaffected by the skeleton's fury. Well, except for her hair that was flying all about. However, that wasn't the reason why she caught my attention. It was her gaze at the salaryman that did. Even from a great distance, which I could thank Tier magic for, I could clearly see the look on her eyes as bright as day. Her eyes were overflowing with hidden malice as she gave a cold, calculating look at the skeleton. Both of which went unnoticed by Ins, Aura, and Team Foresight. The secret unit. I couldn't help but mutter under my plague doctor mask. It was one of those things that were hinted at but never resolved. A loose end, if you will. Knowing full well about the Death Brigade's true intentions as it's disguised as a search party for Supreme Beings left a metaphorical sour taste on my tongue. It's not that I'm worried about Supreme Beings being killed, for I know that they'll never appear in the new world. It's more or less the hypotheticals that its existence creates for Massacre. What happens if the other NPCs find out about the secret unit? What if Ins finds out about Albedo's true intentions in the far future? Then again, all that plotting from behind the scenes could just result in nothing. Everything proceeds as normal with Ins being oblivious to Albedo's true intentions. Though these were just a bunch of what-ifs revolving around a hidden plot, I still couldn't help but ponder about what it means for the future of Massacre, making me all the more curious about it. Goodness, I sound just like Demiurge, overthinking about a plan or something. I first thought to myself. Before I could continue with my thoughts, I heard a peculiar voice shout something from the level below me. Beat their weak asses up, Lord AIMGHMHGM. The shouting came from none other than Shalltear Bloodfallen, who cheered when the salaryman took off his robes and donned more appropriate attire to fight Team Foresight before she was quickly dragged away by Cositus. How typical of Shalltear, I muttered to myself. After witnessing the odd yet slightly comical sight, I focused my thoughts back on the Death Brigade. Well, the most important thing is that I want to keep the secret unit, well, a secret. The other floor guardians can't know about it. And Albedo can't know that I know about it. But it slightly irks me that I'm being left in the dark on the matter. Jesus Christ, now I'm really sounding like Demiurge. Not liking unknowns and loose ends and all. Anyways, for now, how do I proceed? Do I keep an eye on the secret unit but not interfere? Do I somehow convince Albedo not to go on with the true intentions of the secret unit? If I do the latter, how would I reveal to Albedo that I know her true intentions? This was the million-dollar question. However, that million-dollar question was something future I would have to deal with. I pushed all those thoughts and theories out of my head as I focused my attention on the one-sided battle currently taking place within the Colosseum. The fight had already proceeded to the moment where Ins grabbed Hecarim by the face, lifting him in the air before the Overlord cast paralysis upon him and dropped him to the ground. So the fight is about to end, huh? Archie will fly away at any moment now. I didn't have to wait long as Archie cast fly and flew towards the fictitious night sky. Quickly after, Ins called out Shalltear's name. The vampire landed in between Albedo and Aura before walking towards the salaryman. Not wanting Archie to be killed as that would hinder some personal plans of mine, I used teleportation to cover the distance from where I stood to Ins instantly. Narrator's POV. After that, kill her mercifully without any PIO, greetings, Citronidas. Ins halted with what he was about to say to Shalltear when a wild Citronidas appeared within his view. Hello, my beloved darling. Shalltear said in a cheery voice. This time, unlike times before, the gothic vampire didn't immediately pounce on the plague doctor. Partially not wanting to make a fool of herself in front of Ins, and partially because she has been extensively learning about love and relationships since reading sacred texts left by Pararonkino. Well, the road for Shalltear, and his death, to learn about that topic was still rough. There were plenty of issues for Citronidas to fix. For example, her weird and disgusting ways of expressing love. Despite that, she at least had some self-control and improved. Though slight, it was better than nothing. Citronidas replied back to both welcomes respectively. Greetings, Lord Ins. And hello to you too, Shalltear. He said in a well-mannered tone. Please excuse my sudden appearance, my lord. However, instead of killing the girl, could you spare her? Ins put a skeletal hand on his chin, thinking about what the plague doctor said. Could you please indulge me as to why I should, Citronidas? He questioned. While the girl is a thief and an intruder of the Supreme Being's home, she can benefit Massacre more alive than dead. In short, the girl has a talent. Given she is within the tomb, why throw away the opportunity to conduct experiments and gain more knowledge of the unknown art? Furthermore, my alchemy lab is in need of test subjects. Citronidas' reasoning did seem quite appealing to Ins. In fact, the offer was very tempting. A talent? Citronidas did mention to me in a report of his that he wanted to research what talents are. I too am curious about them. In that case, I see no point in not agreeing with the request. He concluded. Very well, Citronidas, Ins said in a regal tone. I'll agree to your proposal. If that's all, you're permitted to leave to get the girl and bring her to your alchemy lab for experimentation. Citronidas nodded after hearing Ins' words before flying away in the direction of Archie. Seeing the plague doctor fly away, the Overlord turned his attention to the vampire next to him. Oh my goodness, the salaryman thought to himself. I brought Shalltear here just to have given her job to someone else? In front of her? That's so BM of me? How can I be a fair ruler if I did something like that? That was so unprofessional. He couldn't help but scold himself internally before speaking. I'm sorry for the sudden change of plans and wasting your time, Shalltear. You can go back to what you were previously doing. If I require something done, I'll be sure to give you that opportunity. Ins did his best to rectify his mistakes toward the petite vampire. There is no need to apologize to me, Lord Ins. You're a supreme being, Shalltear quickly exclaimed. Aura and Albedo, who were in the background, could only nod at what Shalltear said. Besides, I'm perfectly fine with this outcome. Shalltear flew back as Ins turned his attention to the final two members of Team Foresight, Imina and Roberdijk Goltron. The pair was utterly speechless at the conversation between Ins and Citronides. You bastard! Bastard! Roberdijk shouted from the top of his lungs, gripping his morning star tighter than ever from sheer anger. How is that fair? Archie doesn't deserve such a fate. He continued to scream. Will you shut up already? Aura shouted from a distance. Well, I'd say death is mercy if I simply killed her. But, as you know, there has been a change of plans. You should be glad that your friend will help benefit in this great tomb. Ins retorted, still keeping his royal tone. Grateful? Archie will suffer torment. Let's do this, Rober. Imina drew an arrow, pointing it directly at the Overlord as Roberdijk charged toward him with all his might. Shalltear watched from the sidelines with Albedo and Aura as Roberdijk and Imina did their best to fight the skeletal mage. However, unlike Aura and Albedo, Shalltear didn't feel joy in watching the two fail in their measly attempt at fighting back. This was because she was deep in thought. I can't believe I failed Lord Ins once more. She thought to herself, depressed she couldn't be of use to the player. How can I repay my debt to the Supreme One for being brainwashed if he chose Citronides to do the job over me? Does he hate me? She continued. Shalltear couldn't blame Citronides for taking her spot. After all, his proposition would benefit Massacre and she loved him. The thought of Citronides made Shalltear sidetrack from answering her own rhetorical question. Citronides, I love you from the bottom of my heart. I'm glad we're getting closer together. I wonder what atrocious experiments you'll do to that girl, and if I could possibly join you. Scene change. What in the name of the great gods is this? Archie asked herself whilst rubbing her head after hitting the invisible barrier head-on. A wall. We're in the 6th floor of the great tomb of Massacre. Everything you see past that wall isn't actually there. It's all fake. Archie quickly turned around, only to be met by a man draped in a mysterious robe and an oddbird mask. He was none other than the Plague Doctor and Grand Alchemist, Citronides. My name is Citronides. It's a pleasure to meet you, Archie. This place. Archie looked all around her, stunned by what the Plague Doctor said. Illusion magic is something special, isn't it, Archie? He replied. Is escape possible? The alchemist only shook his head in disagreement. I see. Closing her eyes, Archie quickly tightened her grasp on her scepter before charging directly at Citronides. The alchemist, just like Shalltear in the anime, caught the weapon quite easily. He pulled the weapon away from her grasp and let it fall to the ground below before grabbing her wrist to make sure she didn't run away. What are you going to do now? Kill me? Archie asked in a broken voice. Her will to live was almost gone. There was still a pair of twins that kept her going. Well, maybe if my fellow colleagues were here instead of me, they wouldn't hesitate to. But I won't. The alchemy lab benefits by having a person to experiment on to test new potions and the like. You being a talent holder is only an added bonus. Archie's eyes widened with fear when Citronides said those words. Her fingers trembled with fear as tears started to form in her eye ducts. Those innate abilities have always intrigued me. They can range from utterly useless to overpowered. Noticing your talent called All-Seeing Eyes has made me think about all sorts of possibilities. By this point, tears started to trickle down Archie's cheeks. What would happen if I took your eyes and put them in another person's sockets using alchemy? Would they get your talent? What if I healed your eyes back? Would you still have the talent? You get the picture. From those words, Archie felt a warm, yellow liquid trail down her legs. While it sounds painful, but it isn't as bad as it sounds. While your body will have to go through horrid things, I'll do my best to minimize your pain with magic before healing you up. Furthermore, I won't chain you up and keep you in a cell. You will be treated quite humanly, unlike those in the Happy Farm. After all, I'm not a monster that gets a kick out of one's torment. Although not greatly, it did somewhat relieve Archie's rampant fear and despair. Very well, Sir Citronides. I accept my fate. Archie said in a miserable, defeated tone as the Plague Doctor let go of Archie's wrist. She didn't even try to run away as Archie figured there was no point in doing so. However, before you use me as a test doll, I have one request, if you're willing to listen. Archie said, thinking about her sisters back in the Baharuth Empire. She didn't even know if the alchemist in front of her would listen, but the way Citronides presented himself made her try anyway. As long as such request is acceptable, I don't mind listening to what you have to say, Archie, Citronides replied. Archie took a deep breath to calm herself down before speaking. Why, you see, the reason why I became a worker was to pay off the debts of my parents. Back when the Bloody Emperor rose to prominence, he stripped my family of their noble status due to their incompetency. Stuck in their delusions, they kept living their lavish style even though they didn't have the money for it. Oh, I know where this is going, Citronides thought to himself while listening to Archie's story. They racked up so much debt that after a while, I decided that my time as a worker would end with my next job before I took my younger sisters with me and cut my parents off financially. This was why I came to this tomb, to help my innocent sisters. I fear that, if I didn't come and take them, my sisters would be sold into slavery. So, please, I beg of you, find it in your heart to save them. I'll do anything. Just save them. Archie couldn't help but burst into tears from not being able to control her emotions. Ugly and heavy sobs that could make anyone feel bad when heard came one after another. The girl did her best to wipe away the waterfall of tears that formed in her tear ducts, but all that did was make her eyes irritated. If I do save them, I'd have to give a reason to Ins and everyone else what my motives were. I can't just say I saved the twins of some thief just because she asked me to. But I can't let those children be sold into slavery, treated like Tuareg and then killed. That's utterly sick. What to do? What to do? As Citronides was deep in thought, Archie somewhat got a hold of her emotions. While tears did flow out her eyes, they were much more minimal compared to before. She looked at Citronides, who still hadn't given an immediate response, which only made Archie more anxious and worried. Actually, I could just give Shalltear and his death the twins to take care of. Not only does that save the twins from slavery, but those two women will learn a valuable lesson. Yeah, that's what I'll do. Very well, Archie. To Archie, those words were like having a weight lifted off her body. I'll take care of those twins of yours. I'll assure you they'll be safe. Seeing as it's night, I'll let you get some rest. After all, tomorrow is when my team starts experimentations on you. Next chapter, Parenting 101, Foot Eureka and Cuterica. Next chapter, The Albedo Conspiracy Chapter 25, Parenting 101, Foot Eureka and Cuterica. Time skip. Hours. Narrator's POV. A pair of twins looked up at the night sky from their room. Their hands touched the glass window as the full moon's light gently illuminated their faces. If it weren't for the different colored dresses the twins wore, it would have been nigh impossible to tell one apart by looks alone. Do you know when Big Sister will be returning home? Asked the twin who was wearing a pink dress. She turned her head right to face her sibling who wore a similar blue dress. Their names were Eureka and Cuterica, respectively. Soon, Cuterica replied back, turning her head to face Eureka. We're gonna live with Big Sister when she comes back. Eureka asked her sister again, to which she replied with another quick answer. That's right. The twin in blue said cheerily. I wonder what's taking Big Sister so long? Eureka questioned, putting her hands back on the window as she swayed her tiny body left and right. Cuterica copied her sister's movements, also asking the same question. I wonder too, sis. She also said. But when she does come home, I want her to read me a story, exclaimed Cuterica. Eureka gave a heartwarming giggle at her twin's reply. You always want Big Sis Archie to read you a story, she said in a sweet and cute tone. I want her to give me hugs and cuddles. Cuterica also giggled. I hope she comes back soon. Eureka trailed off as the pair turned their attention to the night sky out their window once more. Time skip. One day. As per the deal, here's the 100 gold coins as promised. Oh, and here's the receipt too. He looked at the contents of the pouch filled with gold and gave sly smile. Nodding in satisfaction, Archie's father signed the contract handed to him previously by the loan shark without a moment's delay. Handing the contract back to the man, the loan shark looked at it, making sure everything was properly signed before tucking it away in a side pocket on his pants. Good, everything is signed properly, the loan shark said, making Archie's father smile once more. Now, Sir Fert, the loan shark adjusted himself on the couch he sat on. This will have to be the last time we make a deal like this. If you can't pay your debts within the time frame given on the contract, I'll have to resort to liquidating your assets. Archie's father shrugged nonchalantly. No worries, dear friend, Sir Fert started in a rather chill tone that had no right to be there. If push comes to shove, I'll just sell those useless twin bitches off to the slave trade here in Erwintar, ha ha ha. The loan shark gave a chuckle. Looking at the pictures you have of them around your house, the loan shark looked around the living room as he observed the framed portraits of the family. More specifically, the pictures that included the twins. They'd cover quite a bit of your debt. I know some people that would love to get their hands on them and have those girls used as sex slaves, punch bags, and everything in between. The loan shark's words made Sir Fert smile. As long as he could continue to live a lavish lifestyle, he couldn't care less about what he'll have to do to achieve it. In that case, Archie's father took a slight pause before speaking. I'm glad the brat still hasn't returned home. She was supposed to arrive here last night and run away with the twins, but I guess she decided to go without them, ha 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 ha. Sir Fert put emphasis on supposed by saying it in a mocking tone whilst doing jazz hands. The loan shark huffed. That's unfortunate, he muttered, displeased with what Sir Fert said. After all, only Archie was paying the debts of her fallen noble family. Anyhow, I best be going as I have other clients to deal with. The loan shark got off the couch as he fixed his clothing from sitting down. Before heading out of the Fert manor, the loan shark made sure to say one more thing. Make sure to not forget about the repayments. If you don't, I'll either acquire all the assets I originally lent, or you could sell your twins into slavery and pay me the resulting capital. Sir Fert seriously nodded as the loan shark exited the manor, closing the door behind him. Once the loan shark left, he raised the pouch of gold coins to eye level, admiring it like it was the most important thing in the world. Humph, this gold should last us a while. I'll be able to afford good quality meat with my wife for dinner tonight. Those brats could starve for all I care. Archie's father said to himself. Honey, He called out to his wife in a loud voice. He waited for a few moments but was met with silence. Huh. Sir Fert muttered to himself. That's odd. And odd it was. Usually, his wife would quickly reply or he'd hear the clattering of footsteps. Yet, none of that happened. Archie's father got off his couch before shouting once more. James. The fallen noble shouted his butler's name that should have been nearby to come to his call. Again, no response. Sir Fert thought that he was being messed with by his family for some unknown reason. Little did he know that in the shadows of the grand living room he was in, a certain plague doctor draped in all black attire silently watched him. Perfect unknowable really does its charm well, huh? Citronides thought to himself, looking at the fallen noble with his sack of gold coins in his hands. After hearing that little conversation between that lone shark and Archie's father, I'll be sure to send him to the happy farm where his wife currently is. Perhaps I should send him to that place where Hecarim and Imena were sent? The large hole? Either is fine by me, the alchemist concluded. Now then, with all those thoughts sorted out, Citronides deactivated Perfect Unknowable as he slowly walked towards the fallen noble who he was currently behind. Hello, Sir Fert. It's not so much of an honor to meet you. Archie's father quickly turned around in surprise, only to be met with an ominous sight. Who are you? What have you done with my family? The fallen noble frantically asked the plague doctor, who was slowly walking towards him. If you're talking about your wife, she's currently having a splendid time with some trolls far away. Your butler James? I just used a sleeping spell on him. He's a good person, unlike your wife and yourself. Finally, the twins are still in their rooms playing. I'll be taking them from you shortly. Before Archie's father could say anything else, Citronides swiped his hand right whilst casting a spell. Sir Fert was about to shout profanities when he found himself unable to speak. He tried to shout, then scream, but no sound came out of his mouth. Scared shitless, Archie's father attempted to run away. However, the moment he did, the alchemist cast another spell that made the fallen noble drop to the floor, paralyzed. Silence, such a useful second-tier spell. This would have been so helpful back in the old world. I could have shut up so many annoying assholes. Paralysis at this point is just a cheat against low-leveled beings that don't have any magical items or immunities to resist it. Citronides thought to himself, before focusing on the fallen noble in front of him. Good, I don't want your screams alerting the twins. Adulterated acrimony, contagious spread. At the muttering of two fifth-tier spells, Sir Fert felt an odd taste on his tongue. It was bitter but simultaneously sour, almost akin to the aftertaste you'd feel when digesting certain medicine. If Archie's father was able to make noise, he'd be shouting for the horrid feeling to exit his mouth. Sadly, that didn't happen as that bitter/sour feeling only got more potent before it swiftly spread to other areas around his body. As taste was only limited to the tongue, the bitter and sour feeling turned into a sharp and unbearable sting wherever it reached. Areas such as the stomach, liver, and intestines were quickly affected by the horrible pain. This was all thanks to contagious spread that allowed any toxin, disease, or corrosion-related spells to extend beyond its original limitations. In this case, adulterated acrimony was able to affect the viscera instead of only the head. Citronides could have used metamagic widen magic, but it wasn't as efficient compared to contagious spread. He could have also used both in synergy, but there wasn't really a need to. Sir Fert could do nothing as his tongue, after being overloaded with the horrid aftertaste of flavor, began to rot, degrade, and melt until nothing was there. The surrounding areas affected by the painful sting followed in a similar manner, such as the eyes and nose. Like a virus branching out throughout the body, so too did affect regions both inside and out until all of his face and organs were rotting. The pain was simply excruciating. Have you ever seen what necrosis looked like? Well, his entire face and organs looked like that. And just before Sir Fert's suffering ended by the cold embrace of death. Heal. All the pain he felt instantly vanished as his face and internal organs were restored to normal. While I would let your body rot in agonizing pain, I have a job to do. I can't spend all my time here making you beg for your suffering to end. So, have fun on the happy farm with your wife. Greater teleportation. Sir Fert suddenly vanished from thin air as Citronides put his hand down. After that, the alchemist grabbed the pouch of coins, planning to give it to James before heading to the second floor. With that done, all that's left is to collect those twins. That spell I cast on James should wear off soon. I've already given Inns a proper and convincing reason to bring the two to Nazareth. All I have left is to talk to Esdeath and Shalltear, he concluded as he reached the second floor of the manor. It didn't take long until Citronides reached Eureka and Cuterica's bedroom door. Funnily enough, it was quite easy to identify. There were cardboard paper cutouts of flowers and butterflies that were messily colored in with paint and crayons. But what caught Citronides' eye wasn't that. No, it was a drawing on a piece of paper at the center of it all. The drawing, which could have only been made by two 5-year-olds, depicted 3 stick figures with shoulder-length hair. At the center was an older girl holding the hands of 2 smaller girls on either side of her. These people were, of course, Archie and her sisters. Citronides couldn't help but smile behind the plague doctor mask of his. There was something about the drawing that almost had an innocent essence or aura surrounding it. Well, at least the twins won't be sold into slavery and worked to death, the alchemist muttered under his breath. Before knocking on the door, Citronides made sure to take off his plague doctor mask and put it in his inventory to not potentially scare Eureka and Cuterica. Once that was done, the alchemist knocked on the door. Coming. Two childish, yet cute, and adorable voices shouted in unison from within the room. The door slightly creaked open before it was gently pushed outward, revealing two small children. Archie. The twin wearing a pink dress, Eureka, tilted her head in confusion before raising her head to get a proper look at who was knocking at their door. You're not Archie or James. Who are you? The twin wearing a blue dress, Eureka, questioned innocently. Citronides knelt on one knee before speaking to the twins. Yeah? Where's big sister Archie? Eureka added on in a curious tone. My name is Citronides, a close friend of your sister, Archie. I'm here to take you both to your new home. A place that's far away from this one, Eureka and Eureka. The plague doctor said kindly. Due to having his mask off, the echo-like effect on his voice disappeared. The twins' eyes lit up like fireworks on the 4th of July. Take us to our new home? Is Archie there? Eureka asked, almost not believing the words the man in front of her was saying. You're right for both questions. You're so smart, Eureka. Eureka smiled from the praise as Eureka slightly pouted. I'm smart too, Synopsis, she argued. Citronides put a hand on her head before patting it. You're very smart too, Eureka. But considering your age, my name is quite hard to say. It's pronounced Citronides as in Citronites. Eureka giggled like a schoolgirl at her sister's mispronunciation of Citronides' name. Now, to Eureka's dismay, Citronides moved his hand away from her head. Before I take you to your new home, I will have to inform you both about some things. The twins simultaneously nodded before the alchemist continued to speak. Firstly, you won't be able to meet your big sister all the time. Nothing is set in stone, but you might see her a few times per week. Eureka and Eureka's mouths became slightly agape. Why is that, Citronides? Eureka asked, pronouncing the plague doctor's name correctly this time. That's because Archie is currently being used as a test subject to try out the effects of some different splash potions. And to see the effects of some potions first, you have to be injured to a certain extent. Citronides obviously didn't say that in front of the twins, so he said it to himself internally before. Well, your sister is a very hardworking and busy young lady. But because of this, she can't take care of you all the time. If she did, she wouldn't be able to do her work. That's why there will be two lovely women who will take care of you in her place. The alchemist did his best to sugarcoat things for the twins to understand. Okay. Thankfully, those words seemed to convince the twins. While they did seem disappointed, Citronides at least expected some tears, but that didn't happen. Maybe it was the fact that they already knew Archie was a busy girl or that Citronides said they could still visit her. He didn't really know. Either way, the alchemist internally sighed in relief as he didn't want to deal with crying children. Are these women nice? Will they cuddle me at night and read sister stories? Eureka asked innocently, giving Citronides adorable puppy eyes. Yes, they will read you bedtime stories and give you cuddles while you sleep, Citronides reassured Eureka in a sweet tone, making her smile happily. Now, before you ask, you don't have to worry about your toys or clothes. Your new home will have everything you could possibly dream of. And even if it didn't, I'm quite the powerful magic caster and can make whatever you want with some magic. Whatever we want. Eureka and Eureka exclaimed in unison. Citronides only nodded as the twins hopped with joy. That's right. Want me to prove it? The twins furiously nodded. Holding out the palm of his hand, a warm, luminescent light started to glow before it dissipated. In its place, 2 chocolate bars. What are these? Eureka asked, pointing to what was on Citronides' gloved palm. Why don't you try them? Curious, the twins reached out and took 1 chocolate bar each before taking a bite. It was as if Eureka and Eureka's taste buds melted from the sheer flavor. Thankfully, these chocolate bars weren't designed to have your tongue rot and decompose. Those are amazing. Eureka declared, trying to talk with her mouth full. It's not good to talk with your mouth open, Citronides warned as a parent would to their child. Saurai. Eureka trailed off as she and Eureka finished the chocolate bar, wiping their mouths with the sleeves of their dress. Can we please have more of that later? Eureka asked, having her hands held together. Clean. Citronides quickly cleaned the mess on their dress before speaking. You can have more treats once we go to your new home. Speaking of, we should get going now. Standing back up, Citronides turned around to cast a gate back to Massacre. Gate. A purple portal quickly formed in front of the twins as they became mesmerized by the rift swirls. What's that? Eureka asked, pointing at the swirl with Eureka nodding. This is a spell that's called Gate. With it, you can go wherever you want. Isn't that cool? The twins were absolutely dazzled by what Citronides said. So cool. They both exclaimed in awe, making the alchemist chuckle. The twins, standing behind Citronides, then grabbed one hand each. They did their best to wrap their tiny hands around Citronides' gloved hands, but they were too small. Come on now, let's go to your new home, Eureka and Eureka. Soon enough, the trio stepped through the portal as the scene around them changed from the hallway within Sir Fert's manor to the exterior of one of the many restaurants on the 9th floor in the Great Tomb. The twins were quick to point out 2 women sitting opposite one another in one of the seats in the restaurant. Her blue hair is so gorgeous, said Eureka in wonder, pointing at the woman in a white general's appeal sipping a cup of coffee. But Eureka, the lady with pink hair is also cool. Eureka pointed out to her twin. These women were obviously Esteth and Shalltear that for once, weren't in a shouting contest. Greetings, Esteth and Shalltear, Citronides called out, alerting the two as they looked in his direction. My darling. Shalltear blushed. You look absolutely dashing Totaha. The vampire, in the middle of complimenting Citronides, noticed the two children holding her lover's hands. The ice general was equally confused before the both of them became wide-eyed. Citronides, may I ask why you have children, and human children at that? Holding your hands? Esteth asked with a tint of jealousy in her voice. The reason is quite simple, Citronides spoke ominously as Shalltear gasped. Are you giving me these children to me as se-? No. The vampire, having got her question shut down, looked to the ground in despair. As I was saying, the reason is quite simple. Since the both of you have been eager to have kids with me, I wanted to put your skills to the test to see if you're actually ready to raise children. The pair of thirsty women grew a wide smile. With that in mind, these two are Euryerica and Cuterica and it's your job to take care of them. Citronides let go of both their hands as he gestured for the twins to go towards the woman, which they did without hesitation. Cuterica hugged the leg of Esteth while Euryerica held the hand of Shalltear. As the alchemist gave an explanation about the test and its rules, Esteth and Shalltear were only thinking about one thing. I'll prove to Citronides that I'm the best mother. That way, once we marry and make love, he'll give me a child of my own. I see this as an absolute win. I won't fail your test, my love. Time skip. Hours. Scene change. Esteth and Cuterica were currently walking around the icy plains of the 5th floor. Well, walking around as in Esteth was walking and Cuterica was on her shoulders, fidgeting with her general's hat. The demoness figured that it was important to give her test child a rundown of each floor within the Great Tomb, starting with the 1st floor and working their way down. So, that's what she did. Miss Esteth, Cuterica started in a nice, sweet tone. What is it you do in Massacre? She asked. The Ice Queen hummed before speaking. Well, I'm Nazaric's top general. I lead the armies of the Supreme One to victory, defeating any vermin that dare oppose us, she said proudly. Why? Because it was the wish of my creator, Lord Blue Planet. Why? The Ice Queen internally sighed but was equally as determined to answer Cuterica's questions as she wanted to prove to her lover that she was a better mother than Shalltear. That's because. Scene change. He. Shalltear, I have conquered the final demon god. I'm the best hero in the world. Euryerica exclaimed with passion as she sat on Shalltear, who was hunched over on her back in her room. The vampire did her best to hold her tongue and let the twin continue to have fun. That damn icy bitch, she cursed in her mind. How dare she tell Euryerica about this? Mark my words, I'll humiliate that whore. The gothic Lolita did her best to calm herself down and not rip Euryerica to shreds. After all, she wanted to prove herself to Citronides that she was the better mother. Scene change. Cositus, I'm curious as to why you brought me to the bar. Is there something of significance you need to inform me about? A calm and collected archdevil asked. Dressed in a devilishly striking orange suit, Demiurge stirred the drink in his hand by moving it in a slow circular motion. Yes, it is of absolute importance, Cositus said in between huffs of cold mist. Nodding, Demiurge gestured for the insectoid to continue speaking, which he did. How does one become the best uncle for someone's child? What do I do? That's right, the archdevil thought to himself. Citronides provided a test for Shalltear and Esteth to master. Honestly, what a brilliant play on his part. To prepare his lovers for when they actually have his child. I wonder what their offspring would look like. I have a few ideas in mind. Chapter 26, The Albedo Conspiracy. Time skip, one day. Narrator's POV. Lordins. Albedo moaned the name of her master within her personal quarters located on the 9th floor. She hugged one of the many life-sized pillows of the Overlord she had personally made while sprawled naked under her blankets. Oh how I love you, Lordins, Q. The succubus giggled like a schoolgirl as she rolled around the bed, still hugging the body pillow that was pressed against her breasts, encircled by her raven black wings and in between her thighs. A/N, to all the horny people imagining themselves as that body pillow, do 100 push-ups. Albedo stopped rolling about, sighing as she put the body pillow of her beloved aside before staring at the ceiling. Lordins, I am your eternal wife, your loyal slave. The guardian overseer muttered under her breath. She got up from lying down, having a hand rub against her belly. But it was the act of getting up where she took notice of something at the very corner of her room. Cast aside to collect dust was a flag. However, it wasn't just any flag. Ripped and torn to shreds was the flag of the Gildan's Owl gown, courtesy of the guardian overseer. By looks alone, one could say that the flag fell from grace. While all denizens of Nazareth would have looked at that flag with pride burning in their hearts, the succubus eyed the flag with disgust. How dare they? She murmured with venomous spite in her voice that could kill a blue whale. How dare they abandon us? Albedo grit her teeth as she tightly gripped onto the soft blanket she had covering her nude body. How dare those pieces of shit to leave my beloved all by himself? By this point, her nails dug into her pristine skin from clenching her fists so hard as she shouted with a fiery fury before forcing herself to calm down. Lordins, no, Lord Mominga, why did you take up that name? Albedo was smart enough to know the real answer to that rhetorical question. Despite this, she deplored the name In's gown to her very core for multiple reasons. The overseer couldn't wrap her head around the reason why her beloved changed his name to one that represented those that hurt him and left their creations. Furthermore, the succubus fell in love with the supreme being called Mominga, not In's gown. To Albedo, the act of her lover disregarding his true name to represent the ones that left their creations insulted her deeply. The name In's gown, it makes you weak. Remembering the events that occurred on the 6th floor where Team Foresight gave the Overlord false hope about his comrades being in this new world, the Guardian Overseer ominously hummed. The pure rage Albedo felt from In's made her realize his most vital flaw was his own friends. It was a clear and obvious bluff that Hecarim said out of pure instinct to stay alive, yet the salaryman was still able to be manipulated and lead on by mere humans from past connections. Lord Mominga, the other supreme beings cloud your judgment, they make you susceptible to weakness. The succubus thought softly, reaching for the body pillow to the side of her and holding it to her body once again. How do I keep Lord Mominga from being weak? How do I eliminate his weakness? The overseer continued in her mind, deeply pondering about the subject while staying in silence. It didn't take long for Albedo to find the answer she was looking for as she formed a small, sly smile. That's it. She mused rather cryptically. I know how to get rid of my beloved's weakness. The succubus said in her mind again, not taking the chance of letting someone from the outside hear her disloyal ramblings. Kill the other supreme beings. The mere thought of killing a supreme being itself was an act punishable by death, but the overseer couldn't help herself from doing so. That idea, that thought, was the only way to remove the Supreme One's fatal flaw. And if Albedo could correct that flaw, she could keep her master from being manipulated like what happened on the 6th floor from happening ever again. With that in mind, the succubus wasn't worried that she was being traitorous. How could helping the Supreme One remove his weakness be treason? To Albedo, she was doing her beloved master a favor. Now, lying to the Supreme One wasn't ideal either, but Albedo was doing it for the better. Nevertheless, killing the other supreme beings brought about another question. How do I do it? The succubus asked herself internally. She couldn't go up to Ins and say her true intentions as that would greatly upset him. And Albedo would rather kill herself than upset the man she loved. The reason my Lord Mominga changed his name was to spread the name of the guild in the hopes of finding other supreme beings in this world. If that's the case, why not form an elite squad to find other supreme beings? Yes, that's it. Like a miner striking gold, so too did Albedo with her newly formulating plan. Now, not only could the Overseer create a death brigade to hunt other supreme beings, she could also disguise the secret unit as a way to find them without Ins truly knowing about its implications. All I need to do is find the necessary members for the unit. Albedo murmured, trailing off in her thoughts as she looked at the face of her master on her body pillow. This in itself was a tough task. You see, with how NPCs work, they put the orders of their master above other members of the guild. Therefore, if other NPCs knew about the possibility that their creator could be somewhere in the new world, there was a high likelihood that they could abandon Massacre in search for them. What Albedo needed were strong NPCs loyal to only herself or her beloved so that when hunting a supreme being, the NPCs would continue to fight even when being ordered not to. Within the Great Tomb, there were very few NPCs which fit the bill for this description. But that was all she needed. The other floor guardians can't be trusted with the job. But Pandora's actor, as Lord Mominga's creation, he would put his master's orders above the other supreme beings. Perfect. With one potential candidate for the Death Brigade, Albedo kept wondering who to have within her squad next. The Overseer then thought about her own siblings, Nigradu, Citrinides, and Rubedo. Nigradu is like the rest of the Guardians, she doesn't have the devotion to Lord Mominga like I do. The Overseer crossed out her elder sister's name from her mental list for the secret unit. Next. Citrinides. Albedo was metaphorically stuck at a crossroads. In short, he was too much of an enigma. Due to his unknown nature, the Guardian Overseer didn't know whether he would agree with Albedo's proposition or report her true intentions to the Supreme One. Eventually, the succubus decided to rule out the Plague Doctor off her list for the Death Brigade. As much as she wanted Citrinides in the secret unit, his unknown nature was too much of a risk that Albedo wasn't willing to take. Finally, Rubedo, the strongest entity in Massacre. They say that the third time is a charm. Well, it certainly applied to Albedo here. Rubedo was a unique case even among NPCs. Just like Pandora's actor, Rubedo held absolute loyalty towards Ins and Ins alone. That meant that the other supreme beings couldn't order her to stop attacking them when the time comes. However, that was a double-edged sword. Rubedo held absolute loyalty to Ins and Ins alone, not Albedo. If I could convince Lord Mominga to include Rubedo into the search squad and have him make her obey my every command, that would be perfect. Satisfied with her plan, the succubus dropped back onto the soft mattress of her personal bed with the body pillow next to her. Albedo only needed a few NPCs within the Death Brigade. Just a few powerful summons from her beloved Lord Mominga and the Overseer's plan was set. All I have to do now is inform Lord Mominga about the secret unit, keeping its true intentions hidden from everyone else. This is for the best, my love. Albedo convinced herself with an internal monologue before giggling, cuddling the body pillow once more. Time skip. Hours. Scene change. Greetings, Jerk Nivrun Farlord Elnix. No, I need to sound more regal. The Overlord sighed as he sat in his personal office. I need to nail this for the Emperor that'll come to Massacre tomorrow. All the guardians will be there too, so I need to make a great impression. The skeleton mage tapped his bony finger on his desk as he was deep in thought. As he was going to continue to prepare for the big day tomorrow, there was a knock at his door. Lord Inns, a sweet voice called out. It's Albedo. Can I have a moment of your time? She asked. Very well, Albedo. You're permitted to enter. Inns said in a professional tone, putting aside his thoughts. The office door creaked open, which revealed the succubus in her full glory. Now, what brings you here? Inns questioned as the overseer walked closer to the overlord to have a proper conversation. Is this about my plans for tomorrow? The succubus shook her head. No, my lord. This is unrelated to all of that, but equally as important. Now that got the overlord's attention. I have taken the liberty of putting forth a plan to create a squad to search for other supreme beings that may have found themselves in this world like us. With your approval, I would like certain members to be a part of this unit. Inns put a hand on his bony chin as he laid back on his chair. A search squad, huh? Inns mused under his breath. The idea mostly sat well with the salaryman for obvious reasons. The whole point of changing his name from Mominga to Inns Gown, along with world domination as Demiurge and Citronidas somehow thought of, was to find his comrades. But there was that really small part in the skeleton's non-existent heart that didn't like the idea. The Overlord was simply scared of scouring the entire planet and finding nothing, and that he was stuck in this world by himself. In addition, Inns simply didn't want to waste Albedo's time with something that would be done when the Overlord spreads his name across the world. However, Inns quickly dismissed that idea before continuing to talk. Very well, Albedo. The overseer grew a warm smile at her lover's approval. And I assume you'll be in charge of this search squad. The succubus was quick to respond. Why, of course, my lord. I take no greater pride than in helping you find happiness. It's my wifely duty, after all. Ahem, anyways, how many do you plan on having included in this unit? He said, regaining his composure thanks to his emotional nullifier activating. Only a few key members within Massacre, along with some personal summons of yours, my lord. The fewer members would make mobility easier. The salaryman nodded as he then asked another question. In that case, which NPCs from Massacre do you plan on having joined the search squad? Firstly, your personal creation, Pandora's actor. Inns hummed as he processed what the succubus said. I can see why she'd want Pandora's actor to join the search unit. Being a doppelganger has its unique perks. One of those perks is being able to blend in with the beings around them. That makes travel much easier and less of a hassle. The skeletal mage concluded. I see the benefits to having Pandora's actor in the unit. Having a humanoid makes mobility much easier, especially around this area. But before you go on with who you want, I have a suggestion. How about adding your brother Citronidas to the search unit? Has Lord Mominga found out about my secret unit already? Albedo internally freaked out, while keeping her composure on the outside. No, that's impossible. She reassured herself. Even so, I need to refuse this. While I know it would make sense to include Citronidas into the search unit, I can't risk the possibility of him informing my beloved about my true intentions. She concluded. As Citronidas wants to study the magic of this world, it makes sense to include him in your unit, as he'll be eager to explore while searching. Furthermore, he can easily blend in with other creatures due to his humanoid form. Plus, with that mind of his, I'm sure he could help locate or create plans. While these were good points that would have had Citronidas led into the secret unit, that was only if the secret unit was only a search squad, not a death brigade to secretly kill the supreme beings. While you make an excellent point, Lord Inns, I believe it would be better for Citronidas to have less on his plate. He's already busy with experiments involving alchemy and acting as an adventurer for the Dragon Kingdom. That, along with many other things, having too much to focus on might hinder him in enacting your glorious plan. Albedo did her best to sound as convincing as she could by throwing reason after reason at her beloved lord. While there was the possibility that Citronidas could aid her in her endeavor, there was an equal possibility he wouldn't and would inform Lord Inns. As much as it pained her to lie to Inns, the succubus was doing it for his greater good. Oh my goodness! Inns internally scolded himself. I should have taken that into account. Citronidas, like all the other NPCs, have been working really hard as of late. I need to be a better leader by not overworking them and improving their mental health. I don't want them to be overworked like Hero. Then again, they all take pride in working. I should gather all the floor guardians and the battle maids for a fun activity one day. I do recall Lucifer recreating some old board games with data crystals back in Yggdrasil. Very well, Inns said, putting a hand back on his desk. Adding Citronidas was just a thought I had in mind. You have my permission to have Pandora's actor join this unit of yours. Albedo smiled from Inns' words as she continued with the final NPC on her list, Albedo. Finally, I would like to request my adorable younger sister, Albedo, to be in the search unit. Denied. I knew it wouldn't be this easy. Think, Albedo, think. The Guardian Overseer said to herself. I don't plan on moving Albedo from the 8th floor anytime soon. She, along with the 8th floor hierarchy, is Massacre's final defense force. I don't want to risk releasing her when Shalltear's brainwashing culprit is still on the loose. The salaryman firmly stated. But Lord Inns, I want to create the strongest team. He. I ha 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 ha. Inns couldn't help but burst out into a fit of laughter from Albedo's words before his emotional nullifier kicked in and stopped him from laughing. What a childish, yet understandable reaction. In's first thought, looking at the blushing succubus. Sorry for my sudden outburst, Albedo. I just found the request quite amusing. The salaryman corrected himself in the hopes of not embarrassing the overseer. But I'll humor you and allow Rubedo to join the unit. I'll make sure to have her listen to your commands. All according to Kakaku. Thank you, Lord Ins. Albedo fakely stuttered out as she bowed. No problem. Is there anything else that warrants my attention with this search squad, Albedo? The succubus nodded. There are 2 more things, my lord. Firstly, I request that this unit remains a secret between us and the unit's members. This is to not cause the other denizens to lose focus while working. While it did seem like the odd request to Ins, he accepted the request from the guardian overseer, making her ecstatic and filled with joy. Now, what's the second request of yours, Albedo? When can we have children together? I'm terribly sorry for asking so much from the Supreme One. However, Citronitas is practicing having kids with Esteth and that slut Shalltear by having them raise human children? I was wondering when we can have a child of our own. Albedo, the salaryman stuttered out. If Ins could punch himself right now, he would. Why did I mess with Tabula's settings? I tarnished a dear friend's creations. He internally scolded himself. That is a question for another time. The Overlord firmly stated, making Albedo calm herself down and go back to normal. Very well, my lord, she said professionally. As nothing else warrants my attention, I'll be leaving now. Thank you for your time, Lord Ins. Albedo bowed, showing all the respect she could to the man she loved. No problem, the skeleton said while raising a hand. You're dismissed. The succubus quickly left the office, leaving Ins alone to collect his thoughts. Goodness, he muttered to himself. I'm so sorry for ruining your creation, Tabula. That was all he could say to relieve the guilt within his non-existent heart. I wonder how you do it, Citronitas. Ins thought to himself. How do you deal with those women? Oh well. The salaryman, not wanting to dwell on guilty thoughts, simply dismissed all that away and tried to focus on preparing for tomorrow. Greetings, Jerkniv Rune Farlord Elnix. No, that sounds too enthusiastic. Greetings, Jerkniv Rune Farlord Elnix. No, that sounds condescending. This is such a pain. Time skip. Hours. Scene change. Grusdijk, Wachter Aufseher Albedo, de Ich bin, Pandora's actor. An over-exaggerated and dramatic voice from a certain doppelganger called out. He saluted the approaching succubus that walked closer to the lobby of the treasury. This was none other than Pandora's actor. Pandora's actor, thank you for agreeing to meet me on such short notice. Albedo said politely as she reached the lone couch at the center of the lobby before sitting. The doppelganger followed by sitting opposite the guardian overseer. That's not a problem, mean dame. So, what is it about the Geheimeinheit? I received your letter but don't know all the information. Is there more than meets das Auge? The eye? Pandora asked as his bowling ball-like face stared at the overseer. Precisely, Pandora's actor. I'll keep things short. My proposed secret unit isn't just a search squad, but a death brigade to kill the supreme beings if we ever find them. Taught in the Hocus ain't Wesson? The supreme beings. Instantly, Pandora's actor stood up from his seat as he did a dramatic pose after hearing Albedo's words. However, before he could speak, the succubus continued with her explanation. Pandora's actor, this is for Lordin's safety. I'm trying to keep our beloved Lord safe from weakness. Albedo did her best to sound convincing by making her voice sound strained and desperate as if pleading. And it worked, making Pandora's actor tilt his head before sitting down. Weakness? Do the other supreme beings, the Hocus ain't Wesson, make my creator weak? Pandora questioned. While his tone did portray him as sarcastic, he was just merely curious about the overseer's words. Albedo simply nodded at the question before elaborating further. This is why I've created this hit squad. It's been disguised as a search unit so we can find the other supreme beings if they've arrived in this world and kill them. The doppelganger rubbed his round chin. But that would mean lying to my creator, the Supreme One. While I hate the idea of lying to my beloved Lordins, such a thing is necessary to keep him safe. That way, when we report that we've found no supreme beings in this world, our Lord will forget the friends that abandoned Nazareth and rule over his subjects for eternity. Doesn't that sound great? It took a moment for Pandora's actor to process everything the overseer said. I guess so. He mused in a slightly confused but understanding tone. I'm glad you understand, Pandora's actor. It's good to have you on the team. Albedo said kindly. This is all for the betterment of Lordins. The overseer said once more. And this must be kept a secret between you and me. The other denizens of Nazareth can't know about our true intentions, let alone a search squad to look for any supreme beings. Pandora's actor nodded in understanding. Is this all I wissen mussen? Need to know. The succubus nodded once. In that case, Albedo got up from the couch at the center of the lobby. I have to get back to work. It's been nice to talk to you, Pandora's actor. The doppelganger hummed before saluting. Sie ouch, Wachter Aufseher. Next chapter, Alchemical Shenanigans. Chapter 27, Alchemical Shenanigans. Time skip, 2 days. Narrator's POV. Citronitas, a voice called out a couple of meters from behind the plague doctor, who was tinkering with some tools on a workbench. Yes, Archie. Citronides put the tools he held down as he turned around to face his test subject who was currently sitting on a comfortable seat. What's happening with her? Archie questioned in a slightly confused, but scared tone as she pointed her hand to the person to her right. Her hands clutched into a fist as she gulped down the collecting saliva in her mouth. Laying on a gurney-like table, strapped and gagged, was a woman. The woman strapped to the gurney had eyes full of tears as they trickled down and around her ears from gravity. Her stomach rapidly moved up and down from hyperventilation due to both emotional distress and having restricted oxygen access from being gagged. If she could make any noise like shouting, she could. However, only muffled and quiet noises came out of her gagged mouth. This woman was none other than Clementine. Well, Citronides started. The experiment involving your talent needs a second person. So, I brought Clementine from the Happy Farm to conduct this test. Once everything concludes, I'll send her on her merry way back to Demiurge for breeding and skinning. The plague doctor summarized. Archie shivered at the words of the alchemist as Clementine's muffled cries for help filled the silence of the alchemy lab. Of course, this silence was momentary as Citronides' acolytes working in the background were quick to fill it with whatever tasks they were doing. There's no need to shiver and get scared, Archie. The plague doctor reassured in his typical echoed voice thanks to his mask. Clementine was quite the sick human. If you saw what she did to Nanya and all her other victims, you'd be glad she suffers in the Happy Farm. Anyways, you won't experience the pain that she will when I conduct the experiment. You already know that. Archie didn't know whether to be glad or scared shitless. The only thing she did was nod slowly. Now, enough talking. Acaria, could you please pass over the tools? The plague doctor gestured with his hands to the tray of tools on the other workbench. Acaria swiftly nodded as she brought over the tray before placing it on a table between Archie and Clementine for ease of access. The tray had all the tools required to remove the eyes of both people. 2 sets of ophthalmic speculums to keep their eyes open along with some other tools to properly remove the eyes. Thank you, Acaria, Citronides said to the acolyte who gave a slight smile before giving a 45-degree bow. Seeing as all the necessary preparations have been completed, let's get to work. I've always been curious as to how talents function and all that. Archie, for this procedure, you will be unconscious. I'll wake you up later to take note of the results, okay? The former worker nodded in agreement. Anesthetics. Casting a 4th-tier spell, Archie was hit with a sudden feeling of tiredness before falling completely unconscious. Clementine on the other hand didn't get such treatment. Triplet Maximize Magic, Painful Surge, Triplet Maximize Magic, Open Wounds. While both 3rd-tier spells didn't cause Clementine immediate pain like all his other offensive spells, the moment something cut her body, the blonde's pain receptors would be blaring alarms. The former spell increased the sensitivity of all Clementine's pain receptors in her body. The latter spell would make pre-existing or future wounds worse during the duration of the spell. Of course, because of Metamagic Triplet Maximize Magic, both spells had their effects tripled. The pain Clementine would feel by having her right eye removed would be unimaginable. Acaria, make Clementine experience as much suffering as possible. However, keep the eye intact so I can transmute it into Archie's eye socket for the test. Nodding, the acolyte grabbed a set of ophthalmic speculums and forcefully inserted them into the eyelids. The blonde warrior attempted to scream, but the gag in her mouth didn't allow that. In a desperate state of wanting to escape, Clementine thrashed her head in all directions. This, however, was also unsuccessful. Her head was bound with tight rope to the gurney-like table as she lay nude on it. Acaria then brought a scalpel within Clementine's vision as she violently thrashed her body uselessly about at the side of the tool. MHGHMMMHGHMMHGMGHMMNNNMM. The animalistic noises she made while gagged were wretched and filled with sorrow. Out of pure fear, the warrior puked out her last meal consisting of raw human meat and excrement. But due to the gag, the disgusting liquid had nowhere else to flow but back down into her stomach. Acaria muttered under her breath, looking at the tear-filled warrior in front of her. I don't want you dying by choking on your stomach acid. Clean. The vomit vanished from the warrior's throat as she gave another muffled scream of fear and desperation. Wasting no more time, Acaria brought the scalpel down to remove the subject's eye ruthlessly. Items? STTTTTMMMHMMHPPP. The acolyte gave a sly smile as Clementine let out an orchestra of despair filled with agony and fright. Not only did Clementine feel unbearable pain courtesy of Painful Surge and Open Wounds, but the scalpel Acaria used was slightly dull. Not dull to the point where the acolyte had to use lots of force and potentially damage the eye accidentally, but not sharp as to make the process quick. The semi-blunt scalpel slowly cut in and out around the eye as you'd do with cutting a slice of cake because it was too thick. HMHMHHMHGHMMGHMMHMMHMMHMMHMM. A waterfall of tears were generated in Clementine's eyes. It was a slow and painful process for the warrior to endure. She didn't have the luxury of being under anesthetics like Archie had. While grisly and inhumane, some would consider this poetic justice as Clementine did this exact thing to Nanya, basking in the poor girl's suffering. That, along with worse methods of torture such as using her stilettos and shoving them in and out of her anus and vagina. As Acaria was giving Clementine a taste of hell, Citronides had skillfully removed Archie's right eye before placing it in a small container filled with formalin fluid. This was just a way to store the eye properly as Citronides didn't want to leave it on a table and roll around. In addition, the fluid also functioned as a preserver and disinfectant. Soon enough, the acolyte was finished extracting Clementine's eye and placing it in a separate container of formalin fluid as Citronides had done earlier. As expected of Lord Citronides, Acaria said with a slight tint of excitement and joy in her typically emotionless voice. To have masterfully extracted the former worker's eye so quickly. I only hope that my skills can improve so I can be as efficient as you and aid you wherever I can, my lord. She continued, saying nothing but praise to her superior. I appreciate the flattery, Acaria. And as for honing your skills, that only comes with time and practice. The plague doctor replied, causing the acolyte to form a small smile. Let's finish the first experiment involving Archie's unique all-seeing eyes talent. Could you please insert Archie's eye in Clementine and vice versa for me? As for the transmuting, I'll do that job. Acaria slightly bowed as she did what she was told. Using some specialized tongs to take the eyes out of the formalin fluid, the acolyte inserted Clementine's eye into Archie's eye socket and the other way around. As that happened, Citronides was deep in thought about the whole experiment. Sadly, his thinking needed to be put aside as Acaria finished her assigned task quite quickly. Well, that was understandable as all she needed to do was insert an eye into an eye socket. My lord, the acolyte called out. Everything is ready for you. Citronides nodded once as he walked up to Archie. A small, circular incantation formed around Citronides' right hand. His palm glowed a light blue as the plague doctor muttered the spell's name. Transmute. Instantly, Clementine's eye had all her nerve endings fused properly within Archie's eye socket. The only difference was that Clementine's eye was red instead of Archie's typical blue. Other than that, it would have been impossible to differentiate which eye was there from birth. Doctors in the old world would have loved being able to do this. My respect for them only goes higher with how easy it is to help people with magic. Citronides thought to himself, moving away from Archie and doing the same thing to Clementine. Transmute had quite a bit of use outside typical alchemy where you'd fuse different materials to create a consumable item such as a potion. For example, just as Citronides just did, it was possible to fuse different body parts or organs into a person. So, it was possible to fuse the upper half of a human child onto the lower half of an adult horse to create something like a centaur. However, biological constraints still had to be applied through this process. Taking that into account, the creation of such an abomination would result in the death of the child. This is because the child's heart wasn't adapted to pump so much blood to its lower half. While Citronides would never do something like that due to personal ethics, with transmute, such an example was easily possible for the plague doctor to accomplish. There were plenty of other things transmute could do, but that's a story for a later date. All I need to do is wake up Archie and test both women to see if they could use the talent all-seeing eyes. The alchemist thought to himself, walking away from the screaming Clementine and towards the former worker in order to dispel anesthetics. Dispel. With the wave of a hand, Archie slowly woke up feeling groggy and dazed. The former worker lowly hummed, rubbing her eyes as she adjusted herself on her comfy seat. What happened? I'm kinda tired. She muttered under her breath, slowly opening her eyes. Hey, you're finally awake. Citronides smiled under his plague doctor mask. Skyrim quote. Couldn't help myself. Geez, it really has been a long time since I was Ajax Dalton, huh? All my friends and family, that life seems so far away now. The alchemist mused to himself before quickly snapping back to reality. Did the experiment work, Sir Citronides? Archie yawned in between words before the groggy feeling of waking up faded. That's what I want to find out. Could you activate your talent for me? It wasn't like Archie was in any position to refuse. The alchemist could just demand she activate the talent in an imposing tone. But, Citronides liked to be polite to those that deserved it. Archie nodded at Citronides' request as she activated her talent, all-seeing eyes. Upon activation, her eyes would typically glow blue as she had blue iris. However, this time Archie activated her talent, her left eye glowed blue while her right eye glowed red. This was due to Clementine's eyes being red. How fascinating, fascinating indeed. The plague doctor mumbled to himself as he observed the talent being activated. Thankfully for the former worker, Citronides was wearing a ring that concealed his magical aura so she didn't vomit rainbows like what happened on the 6th floor. It seems like Archie could still use her talent even with another person's eye. I would have thought she could only use the talent on one eye, but I guess I was wrong. I wonder if that has something to do with a gene in her body or her soul. Now I have to see if Clementine could use Archie's talent. The alchemist wondered before Archie spoke and made him dismiss his thoughts. It seems like everything is normal for me. Like nothing ever changed. Archie commented as Acaria took notes on a clipboard in the background. Citronides hummed at Archie's response before turning his attention to the sobbing mess of a warrior a few meters away from him. HHMHMMHMGGMHGHMHGHMHMMM. She tried to scream with the uncomfortable gag in her mouth, but nothing could be done about it. Activate the talent, Clementine. Citronides' voice, even though it sounded the same as it did when talking to Archie, there was a minor difference in tone. Before it was more polite and kind. In contrast, now, his tone here was more demanding and uncaring. It was a minor change only a few would pick up, such as Demiurge or Albedo. Doing what was told of her in the hopes of not being tortured anymore, Clementine did her best to activate the talent. Despite her attempts, the warrior's eyes didn't glow like Archie's did, signaling she didn't have all-seeing eyes. The blonde gave a muffled scream as more tears collected in her tear ducts when she realized nothing happened. HHMHMHMHMMH, PLHMHMHSM, MMMMMMCYYYY. Citronides only clicked his tongue, which made the warrior sob even more. How disappointing. He wasn't really disappointed. Well, the alchemist slightly was, as the experiment of swapping eyes only partially worked. However, at the end of the day, he was glad he found out a new piece of info. If Archie was able to use Clementine's eyes and still use her talent, but not the other way around, is it possible that talents aren't a genetic thing but more soul-related? Citronides wondered as he tapped his foot on the expensive wooden floor of his alchemy lab. That could be a possibility and would explain why Archie can use her own talent but not Clementine, as talents are tied to the soul. Moreover, wild magic was the original magic of this world and that was powered by the soul. Maybe talents are some deviation of wild magic that was created when the Dragon Emperor failed his ritual those years ago, the Plague Doctor mused. If that's the case, then it would be a hassle to take talents from their original users with super-tier magic. As this world is vast, I wonder if there is a person out there with a talent that could steal other talents to some degree. I'd really want Evil Eye's talent for myself. Hers, alongside Zeshi's talent. God, I wish I didn't die so I would have known what her talent was in volumes 15 and 16. Acaria, Citronides put those thoughts at the back of his mind for the time being as he focused on the gagged warrior. The experiment was a partial success and failure. Despite that, the knowledge that Clementine can't use Archie's talent is very useful. The acolyte nodded at his words as she scribbled down everything he said onto the clipboard she held. Lord Citronides, Acaria started. What should I do with the gagged woman? Should I send her back to the Demiurge's ranch? The Plague Doctor hummed as he turned around, meeting the gaze of Archie before facing the acolyte. You're half correct, Acaria. However, I still want to conduct a few experiments on Clementine before sending her back to the Happy Farm. Acaria bowed at the Plague Doctor's words. Very well, my lord. Do you need any of my assistance? He shook his head as Acaria bowed again before going off to do her other tasks for the day. Once the acolyte left the general area, Citronides turned his attention back to the gurney-like table where Clementine was bound to. The warrior gave out a muffled, but agonizing wail filled with terror as she saw the alchemist tower over her, not wanting to feel any more suffering. HMMHHMHMGHMH, NNNNNNMHMHHMMH, Plea might DMMNMTTTT. The alchemist simply ignored her pleas for help. Using his jet-black gloved hand, Citronides dug his fingers into Clementine's left eye before putting it out and crushing it with his fist. Blood and tissue matter oozed out between Citronides' gloved hand like squeezing toothpaste out of its package before trickling down his sleeved arm. All the while, Clementine's vocal cords were going dry from the amount of screaming she was doing and Archie watching in fear. The acolytes in the background ignored everything occurring, focusing on the tasks Citronides assigned them at the start of the day. Clean dot. The Plague Doctor cast another spell which got rid of all the sludge on his arm. Sir Citronides, Archie slightly stuttered out from seeing such a gory sight unprepared. May I ask of you what you're exactly testing? If you don't mind, of course. Why not at all, Archie? The Plague Doctor said kindly. Raising a hand into the air and opening his inventory, Citronides pulled out a glass cylinder around the size of a typical soda can. But this glass cylinder wasn't just any glass cylinder. What was unique about this one in particular was its coloring. From top to bottom, a gradient of sky blue turning into lime green. What's that, Sir Citronides? Archie asked curiously. A new health potion. She pressed on, connecting the dots with the alchemist destroying Clementine's eye and a potion she'd never seen in her life as a worker and student of Flunder. You're partially correct, Archie. While it is a health potion, it also functions as an MP potion. The girl tilted her head in confusion. An MP potion? Is that really true? She questioned in shock and awe. Do you doubt my words? Archie immediately shook her head in disagreement as Citronides slightly chuckled. Utterly amazing. Does this potion have a name? Archie got off her comfy seat and walked towards the potion Citronides held in his right hand. It doesn't have a proper name yet as I created it only recently. However, the alchemist took an ominous pause, making Archie skip a heartbeat slightly. I like to call this concoction Slurp Juice. Yup, the potion was called Slurp Juice. While it was a joke on Citronides' end, the name fitted the brand new potion quite well due to its physical appearance. However, that's where similarities ended. Unlike the Slurp Juice from Fortnite, this potion healed health and mana, not shields, simultaneously. Moreover, the Slurp Juice didn't have to be drunk and could be shared by multiple people. Anyways, I've yet to test out Slurp Juice's parameters. That's why I ripped Clementine's eye out. Citronides gestured with his free hand to the warrior behind him who was still in agony. Archie's skin crawled as she recalled the last time she had a potion tested out on her. While it didn't hurt at all, the gore she saw before being healed up could never leave her mind till the day she dies. Just as the former worker was about to say something, multiple and continuous knocks suddenly arose from the other side of the alchemy lab's expensive doors. These knocks on the lab doors were then followed by voices that were cute and adorable calling out the Plague Doctor's name. Citronides? Citronides. The voices of Archie's twins called out. It's time you play with us. The alchemist put the Slurp Juice back in his inventory as he spoke to Clementine. Don't get the idea that you've been spared. I'll make sure to damage your body more before the testing starts. Alright, alright. Citronides swiftly changed his tone as he then spoke to the twins outside. He heard the mini-celebration between Eureka and Cuterica, who were cheering with glee from his response. Before walking towards the door, the plague doctor spoke to Archie. Why don't you follow me, Archie? He offered to the former worker. This should be the first time you're seeing your siblings since you left the Empire. No, that's correct, Sir Citronides. She bowed before looking at the alchemist's mask. And, thank you for taking them in. It really means a lot to me. Citronides lightly huffed, which could have been mistaken for a hum of agreement. No need to thank me, Archie. Not wanting to leave Eureka and Cuterica hanging, the duo headed towards the lab's doors. Not before Citronides cast silence on Clementine so her screams wouldn't alert the twins. Lightly pushing the heavy doors open, Citronides was greeted with 2 bundles of jaw that clung onto his legs, which were hidden by his grey robes. Citronides? Citronides. The twin in the pink dress, Eureka, repeated the name of the plague doctor excitedly. Can we use your potions to play again? Can you PLA big sister Archie? She interrupted herself from talking when she noticed her big sister behind the plague doctor. Big sis Archie? I'm so happy to see you. Today just got even better. Cuterica jumped up and down with her hands in the air before clinging onto her leg. Eureka was quick to follow before the both of them were trying to hug both Citronides and Archie's legs at the same time. Archie put her arms around Cuterica, hugging her tightly and doing her best to hold her tears in while Citronides knelt on one knee and patted Eureka's head. Now, what were you saying again? He asked the twin in the pink dress. That's right. Eureka exclaimed. Can you and big sister play with us and Esteth, Shalltear, and Cositus? The plague doctor hummed before giving the twin a response. I don't see why not. He started, causing Eureka and Cuterica to give a large smile. Speaking of, have Esteth and Shalltear been nice to you? What about Cositus? As Citronides asked those questions, he brought Eureka upwards and put her on his shoulder, making the twin laugh. Sister Archie? Can I go on your shoulder too? Cuterica pleaded, slightly jealous that her sister was having fun without her. Sure thing, Cuterica. Smiling, Archie picked up Cuterica by the waist before placing her on her shoulder. He, I'm higher than you, Cuterica. Eureka playfully taunted as Cuterica crossed her arms and made a puffy face before laughing. No need to worry, Cuterica. Citronides said. You can switch with your sister later. Or, I could put you on my other shoulder if you desire. Yes, that please. The twin in the blue dress said eagerly. Helping the alchemist, Archie moved the twin on her shoulder to the free one on Citronides, who now had both twins sitting together. Now, you both like to do something fun, huh? Why don't we meet up with Esteth and Shalltear and do whatever fun activity there is on the 9th floor? As Citronides and the twins talked, only one thought went through Archie's head. As long as my sisters are safe, that's all that matters. Chapter 28, Week-to-Week Tomfoolery. Time skip, 5-day. Narrator's POV. Nazarik's Bar. An area that could be found on the 9th floor. While there wasn't any official name for the place, most denizens of Nazarik, if not all, referred to the bar as such. The establishment had quite the Victorian aesthetic to the place. However, there were also splashes of modernism to the bar, such as having flat-screen TVs bolted to the Victorian walls and other appliances. 3 people could be seen walking into this bar. There was one man outfitted in a plague doctor outfit along with 2 beauties to his left and right holding his hands. The rather short lady to his left wore a gothic style of clothing while the lady on his right had a white general's outfit. This trio was, as you had guessed, Citronides, Esteth and Shalltear. Citronides, Esteth spoke out in an alluring tone that slightly pissed off Shalltear. I was wondering, since I've been watching over Cuterica, when could I have a child of my own? Shalltear got slightly less pissed as she used the provided opportunity to jump into the conversation. Yes, I've watched over Eureka for a few days now and I believe I've done an excellent job. Does this mean we can make hot, steamy love in your room and produce a child together? Citronides hummed as he thought about what to say next. Let's wait until we get our drinks sorted out. Alright, Esteth and Shalltear. The duo grumbled under their breaths as they tightened their grip on the alchemist's hand. While slightly let down, deep in their hearts, they both knew that their wish would eventually come true. As that happened, the 3 of them got settled on the circular seats in front of the main island table where drinks would be typically handled. Not before greeting sous chef, who was polishing some glasses with a silky cloth. Would you like the same drinks as you did last time? Sous chef asked, putting down the glass he was polishing. I would, Esteth said with Shalltear nodding at Esteth's words. On the other hand, Citronides said something different. I'm fine with whatever you'd personally recommend, Clavio, the plague doctor asked. The Myconid bowed as he got to work preparing the drinks. Now, the answer to what you both were saying moments earlier. Citronides took a slight pause as he needed to be quite careful with what he said to the duo. Eventually, right after Citronides said those words, the duo internally celebrated like there was no tomorrow, all the while keeping calm externally. Citronides' first thought, eyeing the woman's reactions. Esteth and Shalltear would have pinned me on the floor by now. They're slowly learning. By this point, sous chef had finished creating the drinks for his guests as he slid them onto the counter towards each person. The plague doctor put down his hood and took off his mask, placing it in his inventory before taking a sip of his drink. Thank you, Clavio. Your drinks are fantastic as always. If sous chef had a visible mouth, he'd probably be smiling from the praise. I greatly appreciate it, Lord Citronides. The two focused their attention from the drinks they were indulging in, to their beloved as they noticed his voice changed from having his mask removed. At the sight of his face, the hue on their cheeks turned slightly red from blushing. Anyways, I say eventually as relationships take time to develop. I know you're both doing your best, but the two of you still have plenty to learn about. There's no need to rush things. But Citronides. Shalltear exclaimed. I've learned everything there already is about raising children properly. I've read all the books from Ashurbanipal bestowed by my creator, Lord Pararonkino. A week was more than enough. Esteth also argued this point. While I hate Shalltear, I must agree with her on this matter. Please fuck me. Let me phrase things this way. The Supreme One's true goal is world domination, correct? Esteth and Shalltear nodded as they took a sip of their drink, all the while sous chef listened in, cleaning more glass cups. If that's the case, why is it that Lordens hasn't used Nazarik's army to subjugate the world? It would be much easier and a faster thing to do rather than what we're doing now. Esteth was the first to speak once Citronides finished his proposed question. Obviously, rushing world domination would do more harm than good. There are plenty of reasons as to why going at a slower pace is better, but I'm sure we all know that. The same thing applies to relationships. It was as if a bomb was dropped on both women's heads or as if a switch had been flicked on. Their eyes widened with realization as their mouths went slightly agape from awe. Ah, that makes so much sense. They replied under their breath at the same time. My goodness, Citronides' first thought. I should have said something like this much earlier? Oh well, that gets into their brains now. Hopefully, things progress smoothly in the future. For example, no bodily fluids in the food that I consume or giving the twins torture devices. If all goes well, I wouldn't mind accepting their request. Time skip, 10 days. Scene change. To say Enfiria Bearer was nervous would be understating how he was truly feeling. But, those feelings had a rightful place to be there, as who wouldn't be feeling queasy if you're about to meet an important figure in your field of study? It would be like a passionate college student who was studying science having the opportunity to meet Stephen Hawking himself. And who was Enfiria nervous to meet, exactly? Well, who else other than the Plague Doctor and Grand Master Alchemist, Citronides? Given the opportunity to visit Nazarik with Enri and Nemu, why wouldn't he want to meet an alchemist far superior to his grandmother, let alone himself? And this is the entrance to Citronides' alchemy lab, Enfiria. The homunculus maid, 5th, said in a mannerly tone as she gestured to the grand door of the alchemy lab. The young pharmacist fidgeted with his fingers as he gazed at the massive door in front of him. In the name of everything holy. Enfiria was in utter disbelief, double-checking to make sure his eyes weren't lying to him. Not only was this door one of the most expensive things he had ever seen in his lifetime before visiting Nazarik, but he could also feel the vast amount of magical power that was leaking out the door's small crevices. 5th hummed joyfully. Citronides and his acolytes have already been informed of your visit. Just open the door and I'm sure one of his assistants will bring you to the Grand Alchemist himself. The pharmacist turned his head to face the maid as he gave a quick nod of understanding. Now, if you need any help during your visit to the great underground tomb of Nazarik, you can find me near the 9th floor's communal area. Take care. Bowing with her hands together, the homunculus maid left Enfiria to his own devices. Taking a few deep breaths, the pharmacist pushed open the heavy door before stepping into the alchemy lab, per 5th's suggestion. No words could describe Enfiria's instant admiration for the place, even from only having one foot inside the lab. Multiple levels that were filled with powerful magical items of all kinds. A plethora of thick and heavy books lining bookshelves embedded into lavish-looking walls. There were complex-looking, potion-making contraptions that were on almost every alchemical bench in sight. Everything that could have been possibly needed for an alchemy lab was here. And that made Enfiria slightly drool. The pharmacist might as well have been looking at a top player's Town Hall 14 base compared to his measly Town Hall 2 base in Clash of Clans when comparing what alchemy lab he had in Karn Village. As his eyes feasted upon the scenery in front of him, a calm and echoing voice spoke his name. Greetings, Enfiria Bearer. The suddenness of the voice caught the pharmacist off guard, startling him. You must be Lord Citronides. It's an honor to meet you, sir. Enfiria said hastily, quickly identifying the origin of the voice and recognizing the attire of the man who said his name. It's quite the pleasure to meet you too. Please, there's no need to wait at the entrance of my lab. Come in and have a look around. Feel free to ask any questions once you're settled in. The Plague Doctor gestured to his alchemy lab behind him as he moved from where he was originally situated to a few paces opposite the pharmacist. Before I do that, I must first thank you personally for saving Enri from being killed. Words can't express how grateful I am to you, Lord Citronides. She is the love of my life and I can't live without her. Enfiria exclaimed, giving a heartfelt and well-due thank you to the alchemist. Citronides smiled under his mask and hummed before he spoke. That's not an issue, Enfiria. As long as Lordens wills it, I will gladly defend Karn Village again and again. Now, enough formalities. The pharmacist nodded at the alchemist's request as he stepped into the alchemy lab, getting a closer look at things from the inside. This place is absolutely amazing. Enfiria thought to himself. There were so many unique and captivating trinkets he didn't know which to ask about. Eventually, once the both of them were sitting down, ready for a proper conversation, Enphyria decided to ask about the potion-making apparatuses that caught his eye. Lord Citronides, the potion-creating equipment scattered throughout your lab is easily 10 times more advanced than what I have in Karn Village. May I ask what type of potions you make with them? Do you perhaps create God's blood with them? The pharmacist questioned in an almost pleading tone due to the amount of respect he was trying to show the mysterious plague doctor. Well, Citronides started. One of those potions I'm currently experimenting with and refining is a personal creation of mine I call slurp juice. While I would delve into details, I hope you understand that what the slurp juice does is classified information. And by God's blood. The plague doctor opened his inventory as he pulled out a vial filled with red liquid and a golden trim. You really mean minor health potion, correct? The simple way Citronides said that sentence made Enphyria's jaw drop. Did he say, minor? The pharmacist asked himself internally. I'm truly in the presence of an alchemical god. Lord Citronides, there's so much I want to learn from you. Maybe one day I could be your apprentice. Enphyria put those thoughts aside for the time being as he focused on talking. Why yes, that's the same potion my grandmother was able to acquire. I've been trying to recreate the potion with ingredients provided to me but with different degrees of success. Enphyria noted as Citronides put the potion back in his inventory. That brings me to another question that's also sort of a request. If you don't mind listening to me, of course. The pharmacist put his hands on his knees as he promptly bowed, awaiting the plague doctor's reply. Very well. I'll help you where I can if it's reasonable, he said rather ominously. I need some help on an issue or at least some input from a master alchemist such as yourself. It's just, my stamina potions, they're not good enough. The boy trailed off, darting his eyes away from the plague doctor and towards the ground. Not good enough? In what ways? My girlfriend is crazy? Not actually crazy as Henry is a blessing, but crazy in the sheets? My stamina potions don't seem to be doing their job properly because even after consuming 3 of them, Henry still isn't tired. I need your help or advice as to how to improve my potions. Citronides could only blankly stare at Enphyria's face, not saying anything, which made the pharmacist realize his grave mistake. Oh, shit. I shouldn't have said that? Lord Citronides probably, no, definitely thinks lowly of me now. What will I ever do? My dignity is all gone? Henry's gonna kill me. As Enphyria was having an internal mental breakdown, Citronides was processing what he said. What the hell do I say after that mini-bomb? Do I give the guy some strong stamina potions? Time skip, 3 weeks. Scene change. Today was one of those days where due to their duties as floor guardians, Esteth and Shalltear couldn't watch over Euryerica and Cuterica. It was a rare occurrence, but they happen. Thankfully, 2 people were watching over the twins in their absence on the 5th floor. Citronides and Cocytus. Ha 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 ha, don't hit me with the snowball yet, Cuterica. I haven't finished making my snowballs. Euryerica, the twin in pink winter clothing shouted playfully, using her arms to unsuccessfully block the snowball thrown at her. Sorry sister, I couldn't help myself. Miss Esteth said to me to always take the opportunity to strike at an unsuspecting enemy. Cuterica closed her fist and raised her arm into the air, similar to a victory pose of sorts. While the 2 played in the snow, Citronides and Cocytus were supervising not too far away. Citronides, Cocytus started in his usual echoing and metallic voice. Do you think I'd be a good uncle for the supreme ones and your future children? Considering you've been doing just fine with the twins, I'd say you'd make for an excellent uncle, Cocytus. There is no need to doubt yourself. Citronides reassured the insectoid, who huffed another round of cold mist. Just as the final words came out his mouth, Euryerica and Cuterica ran over to where the duo were standing. Citronides, Cocytus. Euryerica shouted as she moved her tiny legs across the snow. Cuterica was not far behind her sister as they soon reached the duo. Can you play snowball wars with us? Pretty please. The twins pleaded in unison, clutching their hands together and giving the both of them puppy eyes that couldn't be refused. Snowball wars. Huh. Cocytus said to himself. Are you playing in teams? They both nodded. Yes, I'm the hero and Euryerica is the demon god. Cocytus made a humming sound before huffing more mist. Then, Citronides, prepare yourself, as I am the servant of demon god Euryerica, and will bring wrath against the hero, Cuterica. Scooping Euryerica with one of his hands, Cocytus pulled out a wooden sword on another as he pointed it at Citronides, who was next to him. Impossible. Citronides muttered under his breath. Our comrade, warrior Cocytus, has betrayed us in service of the demon god, Lady Cuterica, he said in a playful, yet frantic tone, which caused both twins to laugh. As your dutiful mage, I will fight and protect you till the very end. Grabbing Cuterica by the hand, the plague doctor cast teleportation to create some distance between Coitus and Euryerica. Lady Cuterica, what is your plan to defeat them? Cuterica smiled as she crossed her arms. Citronides, we fight them with snowballs. Reaching for the snowy ground, Citronides quickly formed 2 snowballs and gave one to Cuterica. Then let's give them hell. Time skip, 10 days. Scene change. Citronides, it's a pleasure to meet you again. I sincerely thank you for taking time out of your day to converse with me and generally catch up with one another, greeted a certain archdevil civilly as he gestured for his colleague to sit down in the empty seat opposite him. I'm delighted to make your acquaintance, Demiurge. The alchemist replied to the devil's politeness in kind, situating himself on the lavish seating. Unlike months ago when the demon met up with the plague doctor in Massacre's bar, this area was more like a private meeting room you'd find within a high-profile office. The only difference was that this meeting room was easily more luxurious. I presume you want some insight about progress with the plan involving the Dragon Kingdom, correct? Demiurge adjusted his glasses. A keen eye as always, Citronides. As you're leading this part of the Supreme One's grand plan, I'm curious as to what you're planning. He thought to himself. Precisely. The Archdevil said, putting his hands on the edge of the meeting room table. In terms of Ordincaries and his adventurer team, things are proceeding as anticipated. The different political factions have been thrown into a power struggle, fighting against one another in the hopes of vying for control over the adventurer team. With the nobles in disarray, the Dragon Kingdom will be weakened for Lordan's future nation to easily seize control both inside and out. Demiurge processed everything Citronides said, but couldn't help but be confused about something. Something isn't right. I'm missing something here. He thought to himself, carefully concentrating. There's more to this. I know it. I'm just not seeing the bigger picture. Does Citronides know something about Lordan's plan that I don't? That's the only logical answer here. Damn it. Other than creating a draft attack plan for Clafuth to follow, there's no progress for the invasion yet. This was due to my focus on the now complete slurp juice potion, other alchemical tasks, and the test I provided as Death and Shalltear. But that'll soon change in just a couple of months. The mentioning of the test for Death and Shalltear got cogs turning in the Archdevil's complex mind. I've been meaning to ask, what will you do with Eureka and Cuterica once the test for Death and Shalltear is over? The question made the plague doctor deeply contemplate. As you know, children's skin provides the best for scroll manufacturing. So, when you have children of your own, will the twins be sent to the happy farm for skinning? Or perhaps once they're older, they'll be used for breeding? Demiurge questioned, waiting for a response from the plague doctor. That's not happening. The alchemist internally said to himself. Their sister was considered quite the prodigy back in the Baharuth Empire. So, I want to see if they have the same talents and magical aptitude when the time is right. After all, Nazarick is looking for New World subjects to recruit. Ah, that makes a lot more sense now. I see what you're planning. He mused under his chin. Wait, huh? What am I planning, Demiurge? I just didn't want that to happen to the twins. Citronides said to himself, in the same manner, Innswood in his mind. On the topic of kids, when will you sire children yourself with this Death and Shalltear? He asked. That will happen eventually. Just not for the foreseeable future. I find it fundamental that to raise a child properly, both parents need to be ready by having knowledge on how to raise one beforehand. Demiurge stroked his chin. An interesting take. That does give the child maximum potential to be the strongest they can be as their parents are prepared to raise them the best. I see what you're up to. Putting that aside, have you made any breakthroughs with crossbreeding on the happy farm? Unfortunately, there has been little to no progress on that front, Demiurge said with clear regret in his voice, yet still kept his professional tone. I'm thoroughly disappointed in myself. If the Archdevil was alone right now, he'd most certainly take his anger out on every child in the happy farm by having them skin themselves just because he had that type of power. Citronides, you're truly better than me. You can provide exceptional results in alchemy while I can't even crossbreed two species together. Not only that, I can only provide scroll material up to the 3rd tier. What do you see that I don't? Demiurge put those thoughts away as he continued talking. But I digress, I know it's possible. Queen Draudelian and the existence of Cambions and Nephilims from Yggdrasil is more than enough proof for me. In any case, do you have any suggestions as to combat this issue, Citronides? The demon asked. The alchemist adjusted his seating as he tried to think about an appropriate answer for the scheming devil. I don't know. Make them fuck harder, I guess. The plague doctor shook his head. Sadly, none come to mind. Hearing those words, the archdevil nodded before delving deep into his thoughts once more. I'm an absolute moron. He shouted to himself internally. Obviously, Citronides wouldn't know a clue about breeding issues as I'm the one conducting the experimenting, not him. Once again you've made yourself a fool, Demiurge. I've just presented myself as incompetent in front of a very important colleague. Citronides most definitely thinks ill of me now with how many fuck UPS I've done. You know, time can be your best friend and worst enemy. Like what I said months ago, no matter if it takes months or years, I'm certain you can find a solution to your experimental failures, Demiurge. The plague doctor continued, giving the best words of encouragement he could. Your intellect never ceases to surprise me, Citronides. I truly thank you for your words of encouragement. I'm envious of the wisdom you've picked up over the years by being so close to the supreme beings back in Yggdrasil. I could only speculate what your thought process is like. He, got that quote off a shitty inspirational tweet years back. Man, Twitter was a cesspool. Thank you for the words of encouragement, Citronides. The archdevil said kindly. It's not an issue at all. Now, while I'd love to talk with you more, I have to get back to the lab as time is running short on my end. I do hope we can converse with each other in the future. Soon after, Citronides left Demiurge with only his thoughts to accompany him. I look forward to our next meeting, Citronides. He smiled wickedly before he stood up, heading back to the happy farm. Time skip, 20 days. Scene change. A group of 3 people could be seen sitting on a picnic blanket. Next to the blanket was a semi-large umbrella that blocked the light from the fictitious sun of the 6th floor, though that umbrella was partially useless due to the picnic blanket already being near the gigantic tree. Nonetheless, the view and surrounding area made it perfect for Citronides, Kuturica, and Euryerica to have a picnic. Mr. Citronides, Kuturica said softly as she looked at the maskless plague doctor. I'm full. The alchemist turned to the twin before bouncing her words back at her. You're full? He questioned, not in a sarcastic way, but in more of a sweet tone. MMHM. Kuturica hummed. Me too. Euryerica shouted, looking at her stomach and rubbing it with her hands. Well, the both of you have eaten quite a lot of the lunch provided by Shihoutsu Tokitsu. The plague doctor noted before he put a hand on Kuturica's head. I still can't believe that this rascal over here, he rubbed her hair, causing it to become a slight mess, ate my burger. Citronides finished in a playful manner as the twins lit up in laughter. He. I'm sorry, but it tasted so good. Kuturica pleaded with Euryerica furiously nodding. Your fries, Mr. Citronides, were also very yummy. In the future, can you feed me again while saying, here comes the aeroplane? I loved that a lot. Euryerica exclaimed with passion. While Euryerica didn't know what an aeroplane was due to the vehicle not existing in the new world, she did enjoy the comical action Citronides performed for her. However, before the alchemist could reply to Euryerica's question, 2 sudden voices jumped into the conversation in unison. Euryerica, Citronides fed you fries. The voices were from none other than Shalltear and Asdeath, who exited a portal a couple of meters away from where the picnic was. Asdeath? Shalltear? May I inquire why you're both here? Citronides asked the 2 as he turned around to face them. Well, to be with you, of course. Shalltear said as she quickly walked over to the sitting plague doctor and hugged him. Asdeath wasn't one to be left behind as she sat left of Citronides and put her head against his shoulder. The twins, who were watching the whole thing unfold, giggled wildly. Now, Shalltear temporarily stopped hugging the alchemist as she looked her beloved right in the eyes. Can you please feed me fries too? Shalltear pleaded, doing her hardest to form puppy eyes. The man could only internally sigh at the vampire's antics before the Ice Queen joined in. Actually, Citronides, Asdeath stopped leaning her head on his shoulder as she too looked him in the eyes. Can I feed you fries? You've been working very hard and need a break. Within an instant, Shalltear turned and glared at the Demoness, who only replied with a small, sly smile. Yes, the twins said simultaneously. Do the here comes the aeroplane for Shalltear and Asdeath, Citronides. Pretty please. Both women frantically nodded as they started at the ruby-red eyes of the alchemist. The plague doctor looked at the faces of the twins before sighing, unable to say no. Fine. I'll do it. While he didn't show it, Citronides internally smiled at all 4 of their antics. Next chapter, Prelude to War. Chapter 29, Prelude to War. Time skip, 44 days. Narrator's POV. The plague doctor moved a potion in his hands in small, circular motions, watching its contents slosh around while sat down. To think the massacre at Katsa Plains only happened 23 days ago. That, and the establishment of the Sorcerer Kingdom only 9 days ago. How quickly time flies. Citronides thought to himself, reminiscing about all that has happened since those significant events. Even though Citronides wasn't there personally as he used a mirror of remote viewing, the massacre at Katsa Plains, in other words, was pure nightmare fuel that nobody could forget. And no, not because of bad CGI monsters. The anime didn't do the event enough justice. Simply put, the massacre at Katsa Plains could only be described as hell. Even before the battle, the clouds in the sky oozed an aura of gloom. The feeling of dread was only amplified once horrors from beyond reality were spawned on the battlefield. The amount of fear and distress on everyone's faces was something that could never be replicated. At least for a long time. Soldiers ran in all directions, running over fellow comrades to save themselves from the dark young that chased after them. Speaking of, they were entirely different from what the anime presented and more akin to Sobin's illustrations. Their tentacles reached for the sky as their sharp fangs opened and closed, begging to be fed the flesh of Riestai's soldiers. Despite their enormous size, the dark young weren't sluggish. And their screams could make the most stone-cold person on the planet shiver in fear. A/N, imagine that glorious battle without CGI. What I'd do to see that dream become true. Sadly, Citronides couldn't reminisce about the bloody battle all day. After all, he's quite the busy alchemist. Today is also the day when plans for the Dragon Kingdom should start. Though, there are still a few hours to spare. I guess I could spend some time with the twins or Asdeath and Shalltear. The plague doctor stopped playing around with the potion in his hand as he put it down on the desk in front of him. Noticing Elena walking close by, Citronides called her name as she instantly stopped her alchemical duties and gave full attention to her master. Yes, Lord Citronides, is there anything that I can help you with? The witch asked as she bowed before giving a warm smile. That's right, Elena, Citronides said. I won't be back in the alchemy lab for a while. As usual, you're in charge of the place until I come back. Is that understood? MMHM. Elena hummed as she gave a quick nod. In that case, Citronides stood up as Elena tucked his chair in. I should pay Asdeath and / or Shalltear a visit. They're not a hassle now, which is nice. Time skip. Hours. Scene change. The atmosphere in the throne room in the Beastmen nation's capital, El Sol, was a tense one. Not for the soldiers guarding the place or the servants and cleaners doing their jobs. No, they were going about their usual routine. However, that wasn't the case for a certain powerful figure. The king of the Beastmen nation himself, Clafuth. The panda knelt with one knee on the floor and kept his head down, only being able to see the red carpet that led to the golden throne behind him. If his subjects saw him, their ruler, kneeling in this pitiful state, it would forever destroy his reputation as a glorious and looked upon king. Alas, that was the least of his fears. Clafuth had much more to worry about than his people starting riots, who, by the way, were already quite upset that the assassination attempts against Hope have resulted in constant failure. When will he appear? When will he show up? He thought to himself in a rushed and frightening way. While he tried to keep his composure, his rapid heartbeat said otherwise. It was at that very thought when the panda heard a slight buzz at the other end of the room as if a portal or rift opened a fabric in time. This low buzz then ceased as it was followed by the clatter of footsteps which got louder every second. Claughuth. The king's blood ran cold at the ominous voice which reverberated across the throne room. He very well knew who said his name but didn't dare look up and meet his gaze. At least until he was given to order by his master, Citronides. You're permitted to raise your head. Now, it has been quite some time since we last spoke. How have you been? The king metaphorically held his breath. Why is he asking me this? He already knows everything because of that damn shadow demon? Is this a test? That's the only logical answer. The politeness in the plague doctor's tone only made things that much scarier for Clafuth. Very well, Lord Citronides. Though he had a slight stutter at the beginning, he quickly corrected himself so as to not upset the alchemist. I'm glad to hear that. The alchemist replied, still carrying his polite tone. And I'm also glad you've carried out my orders dutifully. I should reward you. Is this another test? Clafuth thought once more, analyzing the ominous words of the plague doctor he knelt in front of. Of course, it is. The king internally scoffed. Why would this monster want to reward me? It makes no sense. There's no reason to do so. He's trying to tempt me with goods and see if I'd abuse his power. There is no need to do such a thing, my lord. Clafuth stated with haste. As your servant, there's no need to reward me. The plague doctor was silent, at least for a few seconds before replying. Very well, Clafuth. If that's what you desire. The king felt like a weight on his chest was lifted as Citronides said those words. I wonder why he refused? Oh well. Now, as to why I'm here. The panda made sure to keenly listen to every word spoken by the plague doctor. It's time things change. The cryptic and sinister tone of the plague doctor made Clafuth sweat bullets. Change. He asked himself. What does that mean? Is it good? Bad? I'll keep things brief. Prepare an army of decent size to fully take over the Dragon Kingdom within 2 weeks. Make sure that most of the beastmen are of mediocre strength. Enough for a few regular human soldiers to kill one. The rest of your army should be here to guard your southern borders. A full invasion? Clafuth asked, making sure what he heard was correct. Is this another ploy to increase Orden Carey's and his adventurer team's reputation for the human nations northwest of here? Who am I kidding? That doesn't even matter. I just do as he follows now. He concluded. You heard me the first time, or do I have to repeat myself again? Though Citronides was trying to be nice in case the king misheard something, due to his unreadable voice, Clafuth mistook his tone differently. And no, my lord. Everything's loud and clear. The panda replied in his usual gruff voice. Good. Citronides flatly stated before raising his right hand, pulling something out of his inventory. Taking his gloved hand out of the black void was a scroll. It wasn't just any scroll, but a scroll with the battle plans for the Beastmen nation's army to follow. The alchemist chucked the piece of rolled up paper at the panda to catch, which he did so without hesitation. Opening it, Clafuth gazed at its contents, quickly scanning everything on the sheet of paper before rolling it back up and focusing on Citronides. The scroll had everything possibly needed for the invasion, from troops to strategic locations and everything in between. Well, that's what you'd expect from a level 100 being from Nazareth who just so happens to be a master general. A/N, I'm no military expert. So, don't take this battle plan too seriously. Like last time, follow instructions and everything will go swimmingly for you, Clafuth. While your country will have to lose the invasion, your people should still put up a great fight nonetheless. In turn, they can do what they want during the war until they're dead or have retreated back here. Clafuth could only do so much but nod in agreement while saying, yes, my lord. As a king, it pained his soul to send good soldiers to their ultimate demise, even more so than the first set of orders given to him by Citronides as more beastmen would die. But, what else could he do? Refuse the orders? Bargain for a different outcome? Lash out, perhaps? No, he learned his lesson months ago by feeling the plague doctor's brutality. He wouldn't, no, he couldn't feel that pain again. If you have no further inquiries, I'll be heading out. Turning around with his back facing Clafuth, Citronides waved his hand horizontally as he cast gate. The purplish-red portal quickly opened as it emanated a low buzz. Before stepping in, however, Citronides turned his head and said his final words. And don't forget, Clafuth. I am ALWAYSWATCHING. Like that, Clawfoot was left alone in his desolate throne room once more. To be frank, it took a couple of seconds for the king to stop kneeling and get back up as he was still trying to collect his emotions from Citrinita's final words. With the scroll in hand, Clawfoot unveiled it once more, analyzing it carefully now that the plague doctor was gone from his throne room. 2 weeks. He muttered to himself in a low, gruff voice. In that case, I should prepare the army immediately. Time skip, 3 days. Scene change. Draudelian Oraculus, in her typical childlike disguise, deeply sighed in frustration as she looked at the report given to her by a servant. The other nobles who were in the royal court also expressed similar emotions as a few of them threw the paper onto the table in anger. You're fucking kidding me, a chubby noble shouted, breaking the silence of the tense room. At least 20,000 troops gathering by our fallen cities, followed by another 15,000 east of Egale and 35,000 east of here? Capital city Entoras? I'd have to conscript the commoners in my domain to fight. I'll lose so much of my money. He resumed, smashing his fist on the expensive meeting room table. Yug, a noble in blue, shut your fucking mouth, fat ass. Money is the least of your concerns. A noble next to the chubby noble shot up from his seat, slamming both hands on the table. Zip it, asshole. Obviously, money is very important. Who do you think hires all the adventurers? Huh, not you, money grubby bitch. You and your group just spend all the money you earn for yourselves? At least some of us nobles here chip into the defense of this nation, ugly parasite. The noble in blue stated as a very few amounts of heads nodded in agreement. Like that, the royal court blew up as everyone started to get into shouting matches. That was the unfortunate truth of things here. Most of the nobles in the Dragon Kingdom are greedy and selfish assholes. They abuse their power and status to get what they want and constantly argue with one another. Sadly, the number of nobles that weren't like this could be counted on one hand. Draudelian could only grumble at the sight of infighting before tilting her head to look at Prime Minister Brithan, who stood next to her. He simply only rolled his eyes before she turned her head back to the arguing nobles in front of her. All right, everybody, calm down. The Queen's attempt at calming the restless royal court fell on deaf ears as the nobles kept screaming profanities at each other. Draudelian sighed again as she put a hand on her forehead before tying again, this time louder. I said, calm down. Like a teacher screaming at a classroom full of children, everybody sealed their mouths closed as they stopped what they were doing. It was quite rare for Draudelian to do this as she was quite a cheery person. So, it was no wonder all the nobles in the room froze. Humph, Draudelian crossed her childlike arms as she broke the silence she made. Like Marquis Florence said, she took a minor pause as she gestured to the noble in blue before continuing. There are more important matters this country faces than your finance problems. The fat noble and his partners huffed in reluctant defeat as the Queen pressed on with the important matter. Now, can we discuss this important subject civilly, or do I have to resort to other methods? All the nobles in the royal court nodded in unison, which pleased her. Excellent. She clasped her hands together. Now, does anyone have any ideas as to how we proceed? Proceed. A noble in red asked. How do we proceed with that? He put a strong emphasis on that as he gestured to the report everyone had in their hands. We might as well give up and leave the country because, from a logical standpoint, we're all doomed. The other nobles focused their attention on him as he continued his pessimistic ramblings. The theocracy hasn't sent their sunlight scripture in ages. Roble is too far away to properly help us. Besides, they have their own issues. And the nail in the coffin, the empire and kingdom are in shambles with that undead country which was established 12 days ago. This doesn't even take into account our own situation. Resources have been low like they always have, along with low morale. Some of the nobles agreed with the red nobles' points while others didn't like the bleak reality of it all, hoping for some light in the dark. For example, Marquis Florence has a certain child back in Karka village, now Clevis, that he doesn't want to die. Everyone sat in silence, sharing gloom with one another before Prime Minister Brithan pointed out something that was quite obvious. Orden Carries and his team, Hope. What about them? He and his adventurer team, Hope, have saved this country countless amount of times. If anyone could save this failing nation, it's him and his associates. He stated in his usual monotone and emotionless voice. Draudelian's eyes grew sparkles at hearing the name of her country's savior. That's right, she exclaimed, rejuvenated with new enthusiasm. We have our trump card, the glorious, fantastic, distinguished, wonderful, lovely, dashing, powerful Orden Carries. He will save me US. Brithan rolled his eyes again at Draudelian's typical praise of the man she liked to an abnormal degree. He and his team have access to 5th tier magic. And if rumors are to be believed, with how easily they use it, possibly even 6th tier too. A noble in black pointed out as the other nobles smiled giggly. Of course, each noble was smiling for different reasons. Some due to greed, others due to making the Dragon Kingdom a better nation for its people. But it heavily tilted to the former rather than the latter. Ah, Orden Carries, you're so powerful. The Queen internally hugged herself at the thought of the magic caster in white. Well, our odds of winning would certainly increase. Marquis Florence spoke up. But, there's still a 70,000 beastmen strong army at our borders. We'll have to conscript as many civilians as we can and divert resources to our army. That, along with hiring strong mercenaries and adventurers to defend strategic areas. The battle will be bloody, but we can emerge victorious. In contrast to moments earlier, the atmosphere of the royal court was more positive now that there was somewhat of a plan and boosted morale. Well, I'd say we'll have to get to preparations effective immediately. Who knows when the beastmen will attack our soil? The other nobles agreed as they turned to face Draudelian. It's time we prepare for war. May the four great gods bless us. Time skip, 1 day. Scene change. Yeah, the country is preparing for war. Can you believe it? An adventurer in his mid-20s said to his friend as he had his arms rested on his hips. With recent beastmen movements, it's to be expected. However, my brother and father are gonna have to join the war efforts. They're just commoners with no weapon training, unlike me. The friend replied sullenly before sighing. That was one of many conversations Citronides overheard as they passed by the streets of Entoros to get to the royal castle with his death and Shalltear by his side. It's a funny thing how cold-blooded works. I'd be feeling some guilt for orchestrating this entire operation by now if it weren't for that skill and my lore. Oh well. The alchemist thought to himself as the royal castle came closer into view. Soon enough, the trio disguised as their adventuring personas finally arrived near the front gates of the royal castle. Greetings, guards. Citronides said in a loud voice, raising a hand in the air to get their attention. Would you be so kind as to open the gates for us? Why of course, Orden carries, Bathory, and Elsa. The guard shouted back as he gestured for his colleagues to open the gates. We've been informed of your arrival as other adventurers, mercenaries, and the like came here not long ago. Her Majesty is waiting for you in her meeting room. Do you need an escort to guide you to the location? I appreciate the offer. However, a guide isn't needed. The alchemist refused the offer from the guard. Not before thanking him for the information he provided moments earlier. Quickly, Citronides, along with Esteth and Shalltear, walked through the outer gates and into the royal castle. As the three made their way to the meeting room, in typical needy fashion, Esteth and Shalltear reached out for Citronides' white-gloved hands and held them. Though not saying anything, they slightly tilted their heads and eyed each other and gave hidden death glares, as if saying back off. Citronides ignored their needy antics as finally, all three of them arrived at the door that led to the meeting room. Wasting no time, the plague doctor let go of the two women holding his hands, to their dismay, and pushed the door open, revealing a small collective of people sitting around a table. At the head of the table sat Queen Draudelian Auriculus, with Prime Minister Brithan not far away standing to her left and an empty seat to her right. There was also a young, red-haired man dressed in swordsman attire along with a few other people by his side. All of them had red detailings on their gear and a small, flaming flower sigil somewhere on their clothes. Image of Optics. The man with red hair must be Optics, the leader of Blazing Crimson. He reminds me of Reinhard from ReZero. Damn, that was a good show, Citronides said in his mind, eyeing the worker leader and his fellow team members with curiosity. There were a few other people that sat down on the table that Citronides couldn't identify right off the bat. All except one. Cerebrit, leader of Crystal Tier. The pervert sat at the opposite end of the table from Draudelian. While keeping his emotions hidden under a calm front, at the sight of Citronides, his eyes grew hidden malice for the powerful adventurer. However, taking a quick glance at a certain vampire and ice general, that hate slightly faltered as something arose within him. Those women, utter beauties. The clump of cells thought to himself. Orden carries, one of these days I'll beat the shit out of you and take those women for myself. And the short blonde one, oh, she almost rivals my queen in looks. One day, she'll be mine. In the end, Cerebrit didn't say anything as Draudelian gleamed at the sight of Hope entering the meeting room. Orden carries? I'm glad you could make it to this hasty meeting. You and your companions arrived at the perfect time. Please, take a seat. The Queen said with joy in her voice. There's no need for the thanks, Your Majesty. It's our duty to protect this nation. Citronides said politely. With how people sat around the long, rectangular table, there were 4 seats left unoccupied. There were 2 empty seats next to each other around the middle, one next to the Queen and the other next to the clump of cells. With Citronides and Esteth closest to the 2 seats in the middle, Shalltear headed for the one next to Cerebrit. Adjusting her gothic adventurer outfit to sit comfortably, the pedophile used that small window of opportunity to discreetly move his seat closer to hers. Meanwhile, as soon as Citronides touched the backrest of the chair and got ready to sit down, Draudelian suddenly interrupted and stopped him by calling out his name. Hold up, there's an empty seat next to me? Why, you could sit next to me if you'd like. Brithan slightly shook his head side to side at the Queen's antics while Cerebrit held the urge to flip the entire table out of anger. Esteth and Shalltear? They held the urge to flip the entire fucking castle. What? Cerebrit, Esteth, and Shalltear thought in unison. I thank you for your generosity, Your Majesty. I'll gladly accept your offer. The plague doctor said with his typical echo effect in his voice due to the mask that covered his face. While every seat, excluding Cerebrit's and Shalltear's chairs, was a comfortable distance away from one another to provide enough legroom for everybody, the chair space between Draudelian and Citronides was coincidentally closer to each other. With all other eyes focused on the plague doctor switching seats, the disgrace of a human being, Cerebrit, slowly crept his hand towards Shalltear and rested it on her leg, outlined by her gothic dress. He then slowly leaned her way, sniffing her blonde hair as he squeezed and massaged her thigh. My goodness, Cerebrit thought to himself. Bathory's thighs are soft, yet cold to the touch. I could feel her thighs' tenderness even underneath the silky fabrics of her dress. He internally grinned like a madman. This is amazing, absolutely amazing. I wish I could touch her petite body longer. Shalltear could only turn around to face the man, keeping a neutral facial expression so as to not compromise the meeting. The pedophile flashed a small smile before reverting to his usual position, retracting his hand as everybody stopped focusing on Citrinitas. Shalltear somehow kept her aura at bay. However, if it weren't for the eye mask that she wore due to her adventurer gear, everybody in the room would have witnessed the sheer loathing in her eyes. How dare this worthless piece of shit touch me? There is only one man in the world that can touch my thighs like that. I'll kill him, 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 I'll kill him. Before starting this important meeting, I must once again say thank you for coming here on such short notice. Draudelian quickly bowed her head to show her gratitude. While someone of her caliber to bow was seen as a taboo in royalty, she couldn't care less right now. What mattered to her at this time was the defense of her nation and the protection of her people. Recently, the Beastmen nation have been gathering their armies close to our borders. The paper in front of you has all the details. With this meeting, I hope we can devise a plan to successfully fend off their armies and keep the population safe. Everyone picked up the papers the Queen spoke of as they all analyzed its contents. Some kept a stone-cold face while others showed understandable worry. An army of at least 70,000 soldiers. Optics asked rhetorically. In the name of the 4 great gods, that's a lot, Shalltear replied to the man. Well, their forces are split into 3 separate armies. She pointed out. Cerebrit huffed cockily. With the number of troops we have, along with a few powerful figures such as myself, this war will result in our victory. After all, we have the quantity advantage. Shalltear bit her tongue, doing her best not to turn the adventurer into red mist. Then how should we go about deciding who goes where? Questioned one of Optic's team members. Before Cerebrit could answer, Citrinitas spoke up. The most logical would be having the strongest fight the bigger army and work our way from there. Everyone keenly listened as he continued to talk. So, Cerebrit and I would defend Entoros. Optics his team along with Bathory could hold down the southern army. Elsa and the rest of Crystal Tier could defend Egale. Citrinitas finished with his suggestion as Esteth spoke up. That seems like a reasonable plan. How does that sound, guys? Shalltear was the first one to rebuke. Orden carries, is it possible for me to be paired up with Cerebrit? Internally, the pervert celebrated like it was the 4th of July. Bathory wants to be with me? Me? I've successfully wooed Orden carries team member. Ha 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 ha. Why does Shalltear want to be joined up with Cerebrit? I was going to fake his death and send him to the happy farm when Entoros gets overrun with beastmen. Citrinitas asked himself before replying to the vampire. While I wouldn't mind in any other situation, this can't be the case here. The alchemist stated. I believe it's best for stronger beings to take on more weight. Optics and his worker group nodded with Citrinitas' wise words. Blazing Crimson seconds that idea. As the capital is the most populated city and there being more beastmen, it's only logical that happens. Besides, depending on how quickly we kill all the beastmen, we can always come and help. The clump of cells could only internally curse profanities at Citrinitas as not only was he still mad he got to sit with his queen, but he was also denied being with Shalltear. Seeing Blazing Crimson agree with Citrinitas, everyone else in the room nodded to his idea. Excellent. Draudelian said joyfully, clasping her hands. Now that we have that sorted, let's get the rest of the logistics figured out. Next chapter, Midnight Massacre. Chapter 30, Midnight Massacre. Time skip, 9 days. Narrator's POV. Within the edges of Vripolis, one of the Dragon Kingdom's fallen cities, a small squadron of beastmen could be seen holding a party, celebrating what was to come tomorrow night. Their gruff laughs echoed into the night as the fire they had hung around for lighting lit the area, warding off the cold. Hey, Anorak. A rough and husky voice called out to a beastman watching over the party. First of all, it's Commander Anorak around here. Second of all, what ya need, soldier? Anorak, now identified as the leader of this squadron of soldiers, asked in a similar gruff voice. Chuck me that human arm to me, will ya? I'm getting hungry over here? Ha 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 ha. The soldier laughed as Anorak heeded the request of one of his soldiers, tossing the human arm in the air before the soldier caught it in his mouth. Typically, asking your superior something like the soldier did in such an informal manner would result in the soldier having to do extra training as punishment. However, Commander Anorak didn't mind right now as everyone was having a blast dancing, drinking, and eating. Anorak was your run-of-the-mill lion beastman. Except due to his status as a commander, he was equipped with fancier and stronger armor compared to the soldiers. Silver armor that covered his shins and knees, a strap that went around his toned body, and a gorgeous lion's mane to top it all off. The lion beastman hummed under his breath, reaching for some more human meat as he chucked it into the air before it landed in his powerful jaws. As he feasted on the delicious and fresh human flesh, another soldier called out to him a few meters away from where he was stationed. Commander Anorak. A deep voice called out, which made the commander turn around and find the origin of the voice. It only took a couple of seconds for Anorak to figure out who called out to him as he responded to the soldier. What do you want, Zorb? He shouted over the loud talking and music as he walked over to Zorb. Jasser wants to fight you again, can you believe it? Ha 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 ha. Zorb rhetorically asked before bursting into a fit of laughter, putting his hand on Anorak's shoulder. The commander could only sigh and roll his eyes at the information. He really is a stubborn idiot, isn't he? He started. I thought he learned his lesson by now. Well, it's not my fault if he's sore for tomorrow night's attack. I'll beat him into submission once more and put him in his place again. Thrilled to teach Jasser a lesson, Anorak walked towards the brawling area of the party, with Zorb tailing behind him. The duo passed and weaved through soldiers partying and generally having a good time before soon arriving at the brawling/wrestling area where soldiers gathered around in a circle to watch fights. Oh, shit. The commander is gonna beat Jasser's ass. One of the voices shouted out as everyone near the vicinity turned their heads towards the impending brawl. Fight, 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 fight. Everyone chanted as Anorak walked into the fighting circle, looking directly at Jasser. Jasser was a rhinoceros-type beastman that slightly hunched forward due to the muscles on his body. Furthermore, the main horn on his face was slightly damaged and chipped away from constant battling from either practice or in the field. Right, same rules, as usual, guys. One of the voices said to both beastmen who was in the wrestling ring. No weapons, no skills, no bullshit. To win, you either have to push your enemy out the white line or they tap out. Ready, set, start. Everyone cheered as both beastmen got into fighting stances. Oh, so you're approaching me, Commander. Jasser taunted in a cocky voice as the crowd of beastmen around the white ring grew more hype. I can't beat the shit out of you without getting closer, dumbass. The hype in the crowd ramped up again. Oh ho, then come as close as you like. The crowd cheered and roared like teenagers as Anorak threw his right fist toward the rhinoceros beastman's skull. Jasser swiftly blocked the punch aimed for his face. However, what he didn't expect was a strong kick to the side of his left leg right after. Fuck. He shouted in pain. Despite the amount of muscle on his lower half, Jasser's left leg still throbbed with pain as he resisted the urge to fall down. Grunting, the soldier then tried to grasp Anorak's hand which was still in his palm from blocking the punch. To his dismay, the commander instantly pulled back before using that same hand and uppercutting while simultaneously pushing Jasser backwards, knocking him out of the ring. While some beastmen would have wanted a long fight for their entertainment, most of the surrounding beastmen cheered at the fact that Jasser was so swiftly beaten. TCH, one of the beastmen in the crowd snickered as he gave his friend some human meat. There's my food, as per the bet, he said with reluctance. His friend put a hand on his shoulder and laughed. You stupid idiot. Who bets when the commander fights, huh? He's the commander for a reason? But hey, I ain't complaining. I get some extra food from your dumbass, ha ha ha. HMHMGMHG. Jasser grunted, rubbing his head and leg from the pain as he tried to get up. Anorak walked by, offering a hand which the soldier accepted. That should teach you not to try and fight me in the ring, again. Or do you need another beating, huh? Jasser sighed, shaking his head as all the other beastmen laughed before a few others jumped into the circle. By this point, the two of them were a couple of meters away from the circle, giving the two more privacy to talk one-on-one. But hey, don't let defeat slow you down. You're a good soldier to have, pal. The commander gave 2 hard slaps to Jasser's back, which would have killed the regular human due to the slap's strength. Yeah, but I can't do that when this leg is killing me. I'm gonna have to ask Locke to heal me up before our fight tomorrow night, he said as the commander retracted his hand back. Well, you go do that and enjoy yourself now. If you can't tell by those cheers behind us, the others are fighting and I wanna watch. Jasser nodded as he then saluted to Anorak, doing his best to hold in the pain. See you on the battlefield soon, Commander. Anorak gave a small, but warm smile. You too, soldier. Time skip, 1 day. Scene change. Trull, a village that was southwest of Klebus. While the place did share similarities to Karka, due to being so close to the occupied lands of the Beastmen nation after they seized control over Kleset, Void, and Verpolis from the Dragon Kingdom, Trull was arguably more dangerous to live in. Despite this fact, the common folk still had to live there. Not that they were forced to stay in Trull. In fact, any of them could leave at any point. But, if they moved to a major city like Klebus or Egale, just like in Riestais, they'd have to start at the bottom of the socio-economic ladder. This was all due to the shitty nobles that ruled the lands of these regions. Therefore, the people leaving Trull in favor of safety away from the Beastmen nation's border would make less money than if they were to stay in the small village and work. This would also mean those that left would also not be able to provide for their families. However, Anorak couldn't give 2 shits about those facts right now. Not that he even knew them in the first place. What he did know was that he was supposed to take over this village for 2 reasons. Firstly, so the main army can use it as a stepping stone to take over Klebus, and secondly so it can serve as a base of operations during the invasion. Humph, the commander huffed as he crossed his arms. Those humans don't know what's coming, he started. And for the most part, that was true. It was currently the witching hour with the night sky ever so black. If you've ever been awake at night during such a time, you could feel that the atmosphere of everything was different. While that was the case here, it was also different for another reason. That was because Commander Anorak's squadron, which numbered just over 60 beastmen, was soon to flip Trull upside down. And flip meaning to kill all the unsuspecting guards in the village and have fun with the village girls. The confines of their walls give them the illusion of safety. I can't wait to break that, he continued, muttering under his breath in a husky and spite-filled voice, gazing upon the walls that kept Trull safe from within a nearby forest he and his soldiers hid in. It was then when one of the 60 random soldiers walked up to the commander and spoke to him, making him put his thoughts temporarily aside. Commander Anorak, started the soldier in a gravelly voice. Our squadron has finished all their preparations and is battle ready. All that's left is to cause chaos for the village's sleeping inhabitants. We await your orders, sir. Once more, Anorak huffed. Well, enough waiting. I was getting bored anyways. It's time we get to work and seize that small village for the main army to use. The commander turned around, having his back face the village in the distance as he gazed at his squadron. Soldiers, listen close. He started to speak, catching everyone's attention. While he would usually roar these words with fiery rage, he just spoke in his regular voice. This was because he didn't want to alert the unsuspecting humans in the village not far from where his squadron was. At least not yet. It's time to catch those insignificant humans by surprise and cause some needed chaos. Prepare your weapons as there's going to be carnage. Anorak's soldiers formed a maniacal grin, clutching their weapons and fists. Jasser, the commander called out to the rhinoceros beastmen. Lead the charge and break down those walls, understood. Jasser puffed his chest. You don't need to tell me twice, commander, he said with frightening enthusiasm, taking a stance before darting out of the forest and towards Troll. All the other beastmen soldiers followed in pursuit, their weapons held high, begging to be bathed in the blood and guts of fallen enemies. Jasser covered the distance very quickly and loudly, with soldiers behind him, loudly screaming and shouting. Each step of his created stumps as loud as dropping furniture on concrete before his horn finally made contact with the wooden walls, shattering and splintering the cheap defense into fragments. All right, ha ha ha. Jasser roared at the top of his lungs, clearing past the dust cloud he temporarily formed from breaking down the wall for his comrades to enter through. It's Tiha. Jasser's triumphant tone promptly switched to one of confusion as he was met with a peculiar sight. Seeing his soldier suddenly halt, Anorak went into a fit of rage. Jasser, what are you do what the? It was then that the commander also saw what made his soldier stand still in confusion, not throwing Troll into mayhem. The other soldiers acted the same, entering the broken gates before seeing the strange view. Standing in the center of an empty path, roughly 15 meters away from the beastman squadron, was a female with long blonde hair all by lonesome. The female was dressed in a gothic princess outfit consisting of black and light gray with metal detailings attached to the dress. The unknown females also held an umbrella that had the same aesthetic as the dress. In addition, she also wore a black top hat and a red mask that only covered her eyes. Of course, this unknown person was none other than Shalltear Bloodfallen, currently disguised as Bathory. Commander, Zorb said in a slightly hushed voice. This has to be a joke, right? He finished, putting some emphasis on has before letting out a slight chuckle that he quickly retracted. Well, no shit. Anorak bluntly stated. A female human, out in the open like that in this hour? It must be a stupid ploy by those humans. Speaking of, I don't sense them here. The commander slowly trailed off from having confidence in his voice to unease and slight worry as he continued to speak. Despite that, Anorak couldn't help but ponder something. This unknown person's dress seems familiar. I can't quite put my tongue on it. One of my superiors was talking about something relating to this, but I can't recall anything right now. He concluded before Shalltear started to speak. Are you subhumans going to fight, or stand there and do nothing, huh? Her taunting not only pissed off Anorak but every other soldier. TCH, the commander clicked his tongue with displeasure. Oh, don't you worry, little girl. Anorak shouted. Seeing as you're the cause for no humans being here, most likely evacuating them somewhere else, we'll just have our way with you. The beastmen soldiers let out a maniacal smile, some licking their lips and groveling at the idea of doing heinous things to the mysterious lady in front of them. Oh, to have the entire squadron confront me? I'm quite flattered. However, Commander, are you not confident in your own strength to deal with someone like myself? Shalltear's elitist voice only served to fan the flames of anger in the beastmen squadron. Quite the contrary, Anorak spoke harshly. My soldier, Jasser, he gestured to the violence-hungry rhinoceros to his side, is more than enough to deal with some weakling like you. We'll just watch and cheer from here as he breaks you down before we join, ha ha ha. He laughed as Jasser smashed his fists together, showing his eagerness to fight. Shalltear hummed, twirling the open umbrella in a circular motion. You mean the feeble rhinoceros is going to fight me? What a bore. At least send in someone that's more of a challenge for me. She did an exaggerated yawn, covering her mouth with her spare hand. Jasser and his beastman pride could put up with the vampire's taunting no longer as he beelined straight for her skull. You shut your fucking mouth, bitch. I'll make you feel nothing but agony and suff. Sadly for Jasser, he couldn't even cover half of the distance between himself and Shalltear as with the wave of her hand, she cast a simple spell, rendering his charge useless. Force explosion. Just like that, a powerful yet invisible shockwave smashed its target with extreme force. For a split moment, Jasser's eyes widened as his life flashed before his eyes before the shockwave made contact with his body, resulting in his death. Sadly for the soldier, his demise while quick, was excruciatingly painful. At the moment of impact, just like jumping into a pool of water to avoid the shrapnel of a live grenade, all his organs ruptured. This was then followed by all his bones shattering to fine dust and having his muscles turn to mush. In the end, all that was left of Jasser was a red mist which floated around the air and small bits of flesh that covered the walls of the surrounding buildings and ground. To say that everyone was left speechless would have been an understatement. Well, that actually was the truth, as nobody spoke for what seemed like an eternity. It would be more accurate to say that a mix of fear and anger would oversimplify what every beastman soldier was feeling. Can you wild beasts please make this more challenging and worth my time? I don't have all day. The gothic vampire's abrupt talking snapped most soldiers out of their daze, tightening their grip on their weapons as they grit their teeth. Anorak followed, unsheathing his heavy sword which was strapped onto his back before pointing it towards Shalltear with one hand. You. He trailed off in a deep voice. Will pay for that. The commander's voice was louder than ever, his fury untamed like wildfire. Soldiers, he started, keeping that level of rage in his voice. Attack? Fight with everything you've got? Make her pay for what she's done. Rejuvenated with energy as every soldier felt like their fears had been alleviated by the hollers of their commander, each one of them dashed towards the still vampire, who closed her umbrella and took a proper fighting stance. Some went head-on with confronting Shalltear, such as Sorb. Others chose to attack her from her sides and behind. A few beastman soldiers even tried to surprise attack Shalltear by jumping from the roofs of the surrounding buildings. The first beastman soldier which sought Shalltear's head had goat-like features. He was in the middle of swinging his mighty axe while shouting an ear-piercing war cry. Alas, he failed in his attempts as Shalltear, with a swift swing of her umbrella, turned his head into a fountain that spewed out blood. This was followed up by another beastman that had the qualities of an ox, who took the small window of opportunity to attack Shalltear from behind. However, just like his comrade, his fate was sealed as the vampire thrust her umbrella through his heart and left him to bleed out on the floor. No, no. The commander internally shouted as he watched the gothic Lolita decimate his soldiers systematically. 1, 4, 8, 12, 16, 21, 27, 34. The corpses of his men started to pile up around Shalltear at an unbelievable speed that Anorak just couldn't fathom. What is happening? This is impossible. It was right for the commander to think such things. It was one thing to assume one person could take on one beastman. However, to consider that some unknown female could take on an entire squadron of beastmen, thirsting for her blood, that was simply foolish. Yet, that's exactly what happened. How? He asked himself rhetorically, his sword slightly shaking from his quivering hand. Even if one of his soldiers, of which there were now few left, gave some sort of answer, the loud squelching of breaking bones and cries of agony would make his question fall on deaf ears. It all happened so fast. But in the end, all that was left was the commander, Anorak. What a nuisance. None of your soldiers provided me with a challenge. The commander was snapped out of his thoughts when Shalltear spoke once more. You. He growled, tightening his grip on his sword. I'll kill you. Wasting no time, Anorak covered the distance between his enemy and swung his sword, striving for killing blows in the hopes of ending the vampire's life. To his dismay, she kept blocking his precise strikes with her closed umbrella, not taking his efforts seriously and toying with him. No matter where he struck his sword, no matter how many skills he used, Shalltear was still miraculously unharmed. Enough of me defending. Now, it's your turn. The commander's eyes widened as in a split second, the vampire punched his stomach, knocking all the wind out of his lungs. Gah! Anorak coughed out saliva and blood as he was sent flying in the opposite direction towards the broken wall Jassar had destroyed moments prior. Parts of the commander's skin formed friction burns from tumbling across the dirt ground at a fast pace. This, alongside the major bruise which was created after Shalltear punched him in the stomach, made his entire body ache in intolerable pain. Even though he knew fighting was futile, like his beastman soldiers, his pride wouldn't allow him to do that. So, not wanting to give up the fight just yet, Anorak used all his strength and slowly pushed himself off the ground. Even with his arms telling him not to, which were strained from swinging his sword like a maniac at the vampire, he still gave his best efforts. Predictably, yet sadly for him, things didn't go as planned. Shalltear covered the distance between Anorak and herself instantaneously by using teleportation. Right afterwards, using minimal effort, she shattered both of the commander's shins, rendering him immobile and unable to fight. His bones snapped as easily as a bodybuilder snapping chicken bones in half with blood pouring out the devastating wounds. Gwah! Anorak bellowed in pain with an ear-piercing roar that could deafen any regular human for minutes. But, Shalltear wasn't affected by this as she kicked him once more, flipping his body to have his face meet the beautiful night sky. By this point, there was no hope in the lion beastman left. His gorgeous mane was covered in dirt and grime, his armor was shattered, and his pride was reduced to atoms. His legs were useless, bending in ways biology wouldn't allow. For the finishing touch, his body was littered with bruises and blood. Who are you? Anorak said in a defeated voice in between heavy breaths and painful groans from how badly his body was hurt. The commander coughed up blood, taking a moment to catch his breath. At least, tell me your name, before you, kill me. Shalltear hummed, cleaning the blood on her umbrella while meeting the eyes of the bloodied commander, laying on the floor in a pathetic state. You didn't recognize me by my attire, She continued, keeping an elitist tone. She paused for a couple of seconds before answering. Fine, I'll tell you. My name is Bathory. Anorak didn't immediately respond. Instead, taking a moment to realize who he and his dead soldiers fought. Bathory, he muttered under his breath, his voice weak and fragile. The lion beastman let out the faintest of smiles. I truly fucked up, didn't I? He. he rhetorically asked, chuckling at the end before coughing up more blood and saliva. Shalltear only said one thing. That you did. Raising her umbrella in the air once more, Anorak closed his eyes, reflecting on life for one last time. My ancestors, my soldiers. I'm sorry that I've let you all down. The umbrella was quickly brought downwards. And soon enough, the light in Anorak's eyes faded, growing forever dark and dull. Humph, Shalltear huffed as she brought her umbrella back up, opening and twirling it to rid the blood away. Now that's done, I can go back and cuddle with Citronidas before I have to go back to Clevis in the morning. Once the war is over, we'll bond while torturing that piece of shit, Q-fu-fu-fu. Next chapter, A Soldier's POV.